Hello everyone, we are here with a new setup. I got a new desk, and I'm
so
real
cool.
excited. It's really cool. I got a oh man, it makes this podcast so much easier. It's an L-shaped desk, so what that lets us do is Becca and I can actually like sit across and talk to each other, like actually be engaged in eye contact instead of staring at a screen
I
and
feel
falling asleep.
way more awake. I was gonna say a week.
A week.
A week.
You sure
a
you feel?
week.
You sure you're feeling
Maybe
more
I'm not,
weak?
but I do feel more able to focus, which is nice. That being said, let's jump into some reviews.
Yep, let's do some reviews. We're going to be
right.
starting off with Ethan Curonis, which
That chair
he's not
is so dang
normally-
noisy.
it's comfy.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, so Ethan is he's been one of my longtime readers, but he mostly follows my sword art stuff. He's only come in here a couple of times,
Okay.
so I'm actually pretty interested to see what he has to say.
Very cool. All right. You actually did it. You actually finally did it. I was wondering how you'd off him. I suppose that's as good of a way as any, though. I can't believe you actually offed the quirk. Not naming it in case anyone uninitiated reads this, too. This is why I was terrified the entire time I was reading Shattered Fragment. I genuinely thought you were planning on killing off more characters there, and yet it ended up being mostly a fake out.
Let's see. I definitely killed a few people in
Yeah, but
Shattered
no
Fragment.
like main characters.
I killed Crimson.
Yeah, aside
I
from
would
Crimson.
call him a main character.
No, yeah, Crimson was a main character, but we still have like Mataris. So
Yeah.
you just
I think
killed.
I think he's referring to Saphira because like for most of the story
She
it's
was
under the
dead.
appearance that she's dead.
Yeah.
And then they only figure it out later that she wasn't quite the case.
Yep. I honestly can't decide whether to return to following the story. My Hero Academia fics aren't a favorite of mine. I mainly returned out of curiosity as to whether you'd killed Kudai yet.
I mean, hey man, if it's not your thing, I get it. Like this story isn't for everybody. Like I tried to make it as approachable to as many people as I could, but it's not for everybody. That's gonna happen. I hope you enjoyed the story as you read it. But if it's not your thing, no worries.
No worries. It's still good to see.
worries.
Yeah, thanks for your review.
Thank you for your review. Much appreciated. Always good to see you.
Okay. Atomical. Sobbing, crying, sobbing, screaming, shitting my pants. Not actually. I'm all right, but now I feel empty. Girl, I get it. I was reading a book that made me feel that way this week, and I cried my eyes out, and I'm not ready to go back to it. I need a break. Is this the effect you wanted your work to have?
Yes.
Are you proud of yourself?
Yes.
You better be proud of yourself, damn it.
I am very proud of myself now.
Well done, sir. Well done.
Well, thank you for the review.
Thank you, Atomical. Always
Yay,
a pleasure.
validation.
That's literally, she just described how I feel about the book I've been reading. So I'm like, you're doing your job. Absolutely. All
man.
right. Light Hero Kaiser. Most interesting, great chapter, mate. Can't wait for more. Kaito. Okay, another sad chapter. Sad enough that Light is in the corner crying again.
Oh, shut up. Just be happy I don't make your story this sad and dark.
Right. Sorry. You know what I think. I will go ahead and have a sparring match with Ren.
I hope he makes you regret picking a fight with my most overpowered Dragon Ball character.
Blade Hero Light and Bow Hero Impact signing out. Sometimes I feel lost. I really need to read your stuff, man. I'm sorry.
He brings, I think they're a Fate series character or something, and he brings Fate up a lot in the Discord,
Nice.
and I'm just like, dude, I'm sorry, I don't know Fate. I've tried to watch it. It's not gonna happen.
I know. If I was like still in college and procrastinating my work and didn't have children and a career, I would 100% dive in. I'm just like, I can only manage so many fictional worlds at a time, but maybe someday. We'll see. All right. Thank you, Light Hero Kaiser. Joe Clone. Ugh. I knew it was going to be sad, but we caught Kudai in the past. So, gosh, I felt so many things. I'm not thinking straight, but I need to put a review in before the next recording. Well, thank you. I appreciate not having to be up all night long the night before we release them.
Yeah.
Akarui's first meeting with Class 1A. That really stood out to me with us seeing for the first time how their chemistry was with each other right after the USJ. The best part was him deciding to keep Mina on his mind for his brother.
Yeah. I had a thought, but I'm about to sneeze. Hang on. Excuse me. Yeah, that was a fun scene to write. It was hard to, how do I say that, like, regress the character interactions is the best way that I can think to say it, because at this point, like, they're this well-oiled, put-together machine, like, they all know each other, they know what makes each other's tick. At this point, they're all still kind of getting to know each other.
Yeah.
Like, they're not super close friends at this point. Like, they went through a life or death situation together, which, you know, that gets the process started pretty quickly. But it's not like it's even awkward between the different classmates and stuff, but this is Akarui's first time interacting with any of them. The only ones he knows are Kurai and Tenya. And he kind of knows something about Mina because he knows that his brother went on a date.
And he's no dummy.
Well, yeah, he's not stupid.
So...
But Kurai didn't say anything about the girl, like what her name was. He just puts it together.
He didn't have a whole lot to with.
Yeah, he just puts it together.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was fun. Like, kind of getting to do, how do I put, a retrospective establishing shot, I suppose you could say. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it only makes sense because they've been dying to have more Akarui, and they are going to get more Akarui moving forward. So, of course, we need some more character development on his end at a personal level, because so far we've just gotten a lot of smart-assery.
Wisecracking sass master.
So,
I mean, I don't know. He like the emotional moments that he's had, he's really carried.
yeah.
I think.
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
Like,
but
you know,
I mean,
giving up his health to make sure that his brother could be healthy.
But they're not going to say no to more.
No,
Really.
I wouldn't think so.
Another scene was the costume design session. We get to see Kurai and Akarui working together again at Pre-Eye Island, and it's so nostalgic for not just the one reminiscing.
Yeah, that's actually that's pre-UA. Like, Kurai, at that point, Kurai passed the UA entrance exam.
But he wasn't.
He knows
in
he's
yet.
going to UA, but he hasn't even started school at that point.
I love it. One of those rare, like, brothers working together in a cohesive manner.
Yeah.
On the one thing that
They're just totally ripping into each other at
Yeah.
the same time, though. He's just like, when have I ever gone overboard on anything? Do I need to bring up the particle accelerator? That only failed because the school didn't have a proper power supply. It failed for more reasons than that, and you know it. So it's really funny because, like, Akarui is smarter, but Kurai's had to grow up with that, so he's had to learn how to A, take it, and B, dish it back.
Oh, absolutely. And that's just, I don't know, for me it was great because we both have brothers and we know how that banter goes, so I love it.
It's like, I just love, like, even though they're roasting the crap out of each other, they are still working together to make sure that Kurai's costume can keep him as safe as he can be.
Yeah. All right, back to Joe Clone's review.
Sorry.
That line at the end, what I wouldn't give to turn back time, sounds like a connection to perhaps our mysterious new female friend in the Cape.
Ooh.
Could her quirk be time-related?
Ooh.
If not, traveling, maybe foresight?
Ooh, that's an interesting thought. Like, kind of like Night Eye? Because, like, Night Eye could see into, like, so when I first, when Night Eye's quirk first came up, I misinterpreted it as, oh, he touches you and he can see what you're going to do up to 1 hour in the future. What I didn't understand was he touches you and for 1 hour, he can look as far into your future as he wants.
Yeah.
The further away it gets, the less clear the picture becomes. But it's for the time period of 1 hour that he can choose to look forward into your future. Okay. Because, like, that was an important distinction that I needed to make for myself when I was getting into this. Like, even though Night Eye's quirk doesn't really show up much in this in my version of the story, it's like I need to know these things as they come up.
Yeah. Absolutely. No, that makes sense. I'm enjoying coming up with ideas for your story here. Can't wait for the next one.
Yeah, man. That's a really good theory.
Thank you, Joe Clone. Yeah, that is
thank you.
Some good thoughts there, buddy.
Yeah. Let's see. Shall I do? Let's see. So real quick, I think this next one is Silly Kira because it just says guest, but the way they talk and the way, like, some of the things that they mention, I think it's Silly Kira. That whenever I get a new guest review on, I always read through it because I have to decide whether or not to approve it. So I went ahead and read through that, like. like at this point, if I see like Silly Kira or Endeavor to be All Might or another one of my regulars, like I'm just like,
just
okay,
let 'em
approve.
go, yeah.
I just let it go through.
We'll do a fresh
this time
read.
because I didn't see a name. I went ahead and read through this one already, and I think it's Kira.
Okay. Since it's a long one and that screen is a little far away, I'm going to let you take this one.
Okay. All right. Let's see. So, give me a second. Okay. You made me watch the funny guy get serious. I specifically told you not to. No, you know what? It's fine. It's fine. Everything is fine. It's not fine. You made Shuken and Akadori feel all the things, so now I'm feeling all the things.
Same, buddy.
Yeah. So that's the main reason I think it's Kira, because at the end of Kira's last review, he said, don't make me watch the funny guys get serious. So
okay.
That's why I think it's Kira. Sorry. Honestly, I did not expect this chapter to have so many flashbacks, especially ones that lend excellent context to things that occurred earlier in the story. I know you caught some flack for your use of flashbacks about Kurdai's first freakout after getting his quirk, but with this chapter, I would consider those seeds well planted. Showing a Shuken and Akadori's perspective of that traumatizing event was a fresh take that I didn't know I really, really wanted. I think they're referring to me including that flashback. This was during the Class A versus Class B arc, when Kurdai remembered his first episode.
Yeah.
Which I did to kind of lend context to, like, you know, what happens if his temper goes too far. And it was kind of it was kind of meant to subvert expectations, because I was like, oh, I wanted people to think, oh, is he about to freak out and his quirk's about to do something new?
But it was
Deku who freaked out. So that was
a lot of people didn't like that, but I think for me,
had fun with it.
It made sense. But we've hashed and rehashed that one a lot, so we'll move on.
Yeah. I did enjoy doing a callback to that. Like, and I'm glad that I did this chapter now for that in some regard, because like that. Like, I had that there, and I thought it was good on its own, but this allowed me to further bring that in. It allowed me to, like you said, it allowed me to lend some greater context that I might not have had an opportunity for otherwise. Yeah. Let's see. Speaking of which, it was an interesting choice to start the flashbacks with Shuken's string of memories as opposed to Akadori's, though I can certainly see the sense behind it. I kind of assumed that his cousin's recollections would have consisted of happier times, while Akadori's showed more of their struggles with their respective health issues to drive the heavier narrative points home, but you fully reverse that notion. Honestly, I wish I could say that I subverted expectations on purpose, but just, you know, the way that Shuken's life has gone, it felt more appropriate to have him be the one who remembered the harder times, because like that's what's coming up for him here, is he's been here before. And we know, you know, this is the funny guy who's the funny guy because he's got the most pain going on, right? Yeah. We have to remember that like his backstory is like that it's Kudai's second-hand backstory before, like, you know, back when he's still like happy little family with a great dynamic, that's his second-hand painful backstory. And so and Shuken actually lived, you know, he lived it firsthand. He lived it first. Because like later on in the story we see, you know, he was like, he didn't get a lot of screen time, but he was there for his cousins when their dad died. And he told him, he's like, you guys need anything, I'm here. He's like, I'm sorry that we are here, but I'm here for you. Which, again, like, I'm glad that you convinced me to do these chapters, because it really helps. It really helps to lend some really good context for these characters going forward. Sorry to my action and meat loving friends. I get it. I'm sorry. Sometimes you just need some good fluff, right? No, I mean, I don't think anybody disliked this chapter. Okay, good. That's not the vibe that I'm getting. I get nervous. Anytime it's my idea, I get nervous. If it's your idea, I can throw you under the bus. Your ideas usually are pretty well received, so make them that nice way you will. They're more likely to give me crap than you. It's like gaming. If you have if you're playing as a girl, everyone's going to be nicer to you. Not anymore, since this last time that I Anyway, we're moving on from that. We don't need to go back to therapy. She betrayed me at Mario Party, guys. Yeah. Let's see. No more just, you know,
First dose of marriage counseling, and just kidding. It wasn't that bad.
Nah. Let's see. I know we haven't gotten a whole lot of screen time with Shukin, but this truly made it feel to me as though he has been a part of this story all along. While I won't give him the same credit for narrative impact that Akururi has had, I can now see how he has indeed been a part of Kurai's story up to now. I really hope this chapter is a prelude to greater involvement in the great events to come, because I like getting to see things from the perspective of someone who has been repeatedly hurt by the world of heroics, despite not playing an active role in it, and choosing to continue believing in heroes instead of giving into villainy, or at least villain sympathy, if that makes sense.
That's a solid point.
We will see, maybe not as much as you're hoping for, but Shukin will definitely be more involved in the story from now on.
Yay!
Yeah.
I love his
character. I mean, I don't know. What do you think on what do you think on that?
Oh,
like how he could have become a villain sympathizer kind of thing?
Absolutely. But I mean, that's the thing. There's always going to be people who are the middle ground. Like when you're talking, no matter what political opinions you're talking, everyone has an opinion, but not everyone is going to go all crazy and start protesting and setting fires in the streets. There's anyone you talk to is going to have a personal reason for believing what they believe. Otherwise, they're just not. They're in La La Land. They're not in the real world.
That's not their own belief. That's just being a drone.
Yeah, and I mean, and there's a lot of people who just kind of have political opinions because of what people have told them, but generally the people who told them are somebody they have an emotional connection to, or somebody who has a lot of influence in their life, right? And so it's like he's just going to be one of the everyday characters who's not gonna be like a total psycho serial killer.
By the way, I can just hear already Silver and Robin especially are gonna be making jokes about how Shukin's writing a sequel or a prequel to Kurai's big book of sad traumatic events.
Absolutely.
I can already hear it.
Oh man.
Anyway. Yeah. Let's see. Now that I think about it, Shukin kind of gives me a reverse Rhodey soul vibe. Rhodey's father was taken by villains, leading him down the path of destitution in which he struggled to provide for his family. Shukin's family members have slowly been taken away one by one in a similar fashion, which nearly brings him to a place of utter despair, but in the end, he chooses to believe in the path that took his father, uncle, and cousin to their respective deaths.
That gave me goosebumps.
Maybe I'm reading too much into it, but that's just the vibe I got.
I like that. Hey, dogs, stop it. Sorry.
My dogs are annoying sometimes.
The pit pug literally farted, looked at me, and ran away the other day. So we're not getting along right now. Oh, man.
Let's see. While this chapter made me incredibly sad, I did love getting confirmation that Akururi was just basically born an utter savage and destroyer of people's dignity. I know we saw him in action against the bullies that Kurai just about maimed, but we got to see him exhibit similar traits as a 3-year-old were something else to witness. Although, given how his mother apparently handled the families of the bullies, I guess we're starting to get a better idea of where that particular trait comes from. Oh yeah, Akururi definitely got his savagery from his mom. Like that's not his dad
I feel like
at all.
their mom reminds me. Like I feel like most of the characters in the story aren't really connected to any personal relationships we have, but I feel like their mom reminds me of your mom. Like,
I can see that
more than any other. Like I don't think any other characters are based on anyone we know, but like that their mom definitely reminds me of your mom, just with that savagery. And I love her.
My mom is never the first person to back down.
Oh, that woman, I love her. Seriously, she's like my mom at this point. Yep. It's not like just saying that because she's my mother-in-law. She's amazing, and thankfully did not break the law to give her son a better life. We have her today.
Yeah. But yeah, like I could definitely I could certainly see my mom handling a situation like that.
Well, not with the law. Your parents are pretty.
No, I'm talking about handling the bully families.
Okay. I was gonna say because your parents are like very intense. Like.
Oh yeah.
Rules are rules, like very vroom, follow the rules. Like they're more like Ida in that regard. Sorry,
but
total
yes,
tangent.
to answer that, yeah, Akururi's savagery most certainly comes from his mother. Let's see. My favorite scene has to be the one where Kurai and Akururi are designing his hero costume together. It was really bittersweet to see the two of them as they were before everything in Kurai's story at UA really got started. because in the memory they have the sense of, we know there's risk, but we can handle it. While they weren't wrong about the risks that Kodai would face, it's now obvious that there was no way for them to be able to know the full extent of the risks he would end up facing. To them, his quirk's drawback was the most dangerous thing to his safety, and against most villains, they were probably right, which makes it so disheartening for Akurui in particular to realize as his brother went on his journey to become a hero. Yeah, I mean, I think this is putting a little bit of myself in the story here, is because, how do I put this? Like I've been diabetic for nearly 15 years at this point. And I remember when I was a kid, they were telling me that, like, you know, after X number of years, your body's going to start having a tougher time with some of these, some of your organs are going to start having a harder time with things. I've developed other health problems since then that don't relate to the diabetes, but earlier this year, I ended up having to start taking kidney medication because my kidneys are starting to have a little bit of a hard time. I'm not going to go on dialysis or anything like that. I don't need a transplant. Don't worry about that. Like, it's just, I just need to take some medication to kind of make things easier. And it's kind of the sense of, like, it's been in the back of my head for so long that it's like, oh yeah, that I'll get to that when I get to, like, there's risk, but it'll be fine. I can handle it when it gets here.
I don't know. 16-year-old Joseph was pretty melodramatic about it. We'll move on. Sorry.
What are you even... Are you talking about that one time where my kidneys almost shut off?
No, I'm not talking about that at all.
I can't tell if you're being sarcastic or not.
No, I'm not being sarcastic.
No, fun fact, my kidneys did almost shut off at one point. That was rough. That hurt. Fortunately I'm fine now. Fine. More or less. But yeah, so it was kind of like, like you get the sense of, like, oh yeah, they know that the risks are coming, but they're like, we're preparing for it. We'll be fine. But when it arrives, you know, you're never really prepared for it. It hits different. It always hits in a way that you can't expect. Yeah. So that bit was me consciously putting some of my own experience into this.
Okay. I see that.
Which I think for the most part in this story, most of my putting myself into this has been in an unconscious fashion. There have only been a few times where I'm like, no, I'm gonna use my own experience on this to breathe into the story. Yeah. But yeah, that was a fun scene to do for them together.
Cool.
I quite liked it. Only as I read this chapter did I realize we never actually got to see Akurui's first meeting with the class until now. When he visited Kurai in the hospital during the earlier part of this story, he made fun of Kurai about Mina, but at the time, I guess it just flew over my head that we didn't get to witness this particular interaction. Or maybe it just didn't seem as important at the time. Either way, I really liked how he officially met Mina and was quick to realize that she was someone special. Yeah, like, in the first part of the story, so like phase 1, there were only a very few number of times that we actually see Akurui up until, like, the fight on Island. Yeah. We saw him when... we see him for, like, a sentence or two, like, during the first chapter when he's congratulating his brother for getting in. We see him right before Kurai goes to meet Mina for his date. We see him when he wakes up in the hospital. And then we don't see him for a while until the sports festival. And even then, when he's there, it's mostly over phone and text as, like, off-screen. Yeah. Like, he's in for one bit. Then when we got to Island, you know, then he was, like, actually there and a driving part of the story.
That's the first time I remember people actually reacting to his character, too. Because he had enough dialogue that all of a sudden they're like, oh, my goodness, who is this little sass master?
Like, But yeah, it was... Yeah, it was... how do I put... Yeah, it was... Again, it was kind of hard to back it up on how these people interact with each other. Because their first... Like, the first thing he thinks when Mina picks him up and saves him from getting smacked is like, okay, don't be a jackass. Because he's like, he knows he's hard to deal with. But he's having a really bad day. So he's having to, like, try really hard not to, like, say something super cutting to the person who just helped him. And he has no idea who she even is.
Which I appreciate because he's more introspective. Because usually when you have, like, the child genius or the Sherlock, they just don't care whatever other people think. They just have their weird, like, I'm a genius and I'm going to say whatever the heck I want. I'm smarter than everybody else, so therefore my opinion's the only one that's valid. And so I appreciate that he has this inner dialogue going on. Like, don't be a jerk. Don't be a jerk. Okay, I got to work on
Shut your mouth. You lower the IQ of the whole street every time you speak.
But no, that one really got me too because I forget that Akurui does have his own health stuff going on, and that really played into who he is. And
his isn't as obvious or like dramatic most of the time, but when it kicks in, it's like it's just as frightening as what happens to Kurai.
Yeah, definitely.
Let's see. I know I said I wanted to see what was in Kurai's message to Akurui in case he died, but geez, if that didn't hurt to read. Just the way he talks to his brother with his final words show how close they actually were. There's no beating around the bush, no hesitations in his apologies, but what really got me was Kurai trying to set Akurui free from any of the expectations that might come to him because he's Kurai's brother. He wants him to grow up to become his own person and to live better than he allowed himself to live. He let Akurui know that he believed in him so that even if he doubts himself going forward, he'll always know that Kurai trusted him with the future that he and their father were not able to be a part of so that he might do better than they could have done.
Ouch. My heart.
Yeah, I mean, Kurai's not dumb. He knows, like the experiences on Naboo Island showed him in his last days, like, oh wow, like people are paying attention to me. And so, like, in knowing that, he's like, if I am gone, people are going to be watching what Akurui does because he's already a child prodigy when it comes to.
Oh yeah, that's a good point.
When it comes to his education. So, like, if people weren't going to watch him before, they really will be watching him now. So he just wants to leave his brother with the sense of like don't be me, like don't try to do what I did, because he wants Akurui to live the best life that Akurui.
The question is he going to follow that advice? Yeah,
that is the question. Let's see. I do have to wonder how Akurui will try to help Mina through her mourning process. This could give way to an interesting new dynamic between two characters in despair. I'm very interested to see what you do with it, as I doubt Akurui is about to ignore one of his brother's last wishes. Yeah, this will be interesting. I'll say that. He wants to turn back time, huh? Do I smell time-traveling shenanigans incoming, courtesy of the boy whom I absolutely believe would become obsessed and actually be smart enough to pull off such an insane Wait. This girl has dark hair and seems to hate Shigaraki. I know that dark hair isn't exactly an uncommon feature, but the Hogosha family has black hair, don't
In
they?
anime, it is.
You know
Just
what,
kidding.
though? In My Hero Academia, there's a
lot
lot
of
of people with
dark-haired
a lot
characters.
of...
You're right.
There's a lot of people with a lot of different colored hair than black or brown.
That's true.
Like, normally in anime, it's like the main characters have this wacky looking hairdo, but like everybody in My Hero Academia so I don't know who, like, Kohei Horikoshi, like, that man, like, I don't know how he came up with that many different hairstyles.
Character design.
Like, just the hairstyles alone, because, like, even on the people who are in the background, like, just providing backdrop, like, you look at some of those people, their hairdos are insane.
Yeah,
like,
I mean, with all of the
even?
character designing that we've been doing for one of your new projects, it's hard to come up with hairstyles that don't like you're just regurgitating the same person over and over again.
Yeah.
It's challenging, especially when you have your own drawing style and you need to kind of get out of that mold.
Yeah.
So it's impressive. That I definitely get props to that.
Yeah. So, sorry, let's see, I went on a bit of a tangent, but yeah, black hair is, it's not, I wouldn't say that it's a rare feature, it's not uncommon, I wouldn't say it's uncommon.
That being said, there are a lot of dark-haired people in the show, too.
Yeah, this is true.
So, let's see.
I think Yajirozu is the only other one in the class that has black hair.
Yeah, but then we have Midnight, we have Eraserhead, we have the kid, we literally just said his name, the one who eats food and changes.
Oh, Amajiki?
Amajiki has dark hair.
Yeah, that's true.
So, I mean, there's quite a few characters with dark hair.
That's true. Let's see. The Hogosha family has black hair, don't they? Could this girl be Akurui's future daughter? One he somehow sent back in time to save his brother after something happened with Shigaraki in the future? I know I'm probably wrong, but boy, will I be excited if I turn out to be right for this one. Excited shrieking ensues.
I love that.
That's hilarious. That's a really good theory. That's a really good theory. I like that theory.
Coming from the guy who used to hate time travel.
Time travel confuses me, okay?
Yeah. So that's, I mean,
it stresses me out.
You're warming up to it, which is nice.
Yeah.
If it's done well, it's good. If
it's done in a way that doesn't give me a headache trying to keep up with who went where at what time and when.
Yeah, that's insanity right there.
Yeah.
It can get a little out of hand and unstable if you're trying to manage that in a world.
All right. Micah and Mako Ashido. I think there was a misspell there. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Micah and Mako Ashido. Those are Mina's brothers, right? Huh. Wonder what they're going to bring to the story. Yeah, they are her brothers. I'm excited to know about the girl in case you can't tell.
Nice.
Oh, man. I'm excited for you guys to find out.
Yeah,
I'm really excited for you guys to find out.
And nervous. I'm nervous. But excited.
Yeah, I'm so excited. All right, and lastly, we have Last Robin.
All right. This is the stuff I've been waiting for.
Oh, boy.
Reactions, emotions, trauma, bring it out. I've been waiting long for it, and it's nice to see. Dude, you mention Revan so much. Just play Knights of the Old Republic. He has not played it. You're missing out. Just do it.
I'm waiting for the remake, and if you think you can pressure me into playing the outdated version, need I remind you that I waited a good part of 3 years to kill off the character that I promised to kill at the beginning of the story?
He's the most stubborn person I've ever met. I'm sorry. Good luck convincing him. But, I mean, you guys got him to watch Moana by buying him Moana, so I don't know. I don't know what to tell you, man. Yep. All right. More Akurui. Good. More emotion. Good. Bring more reactions to actions. I kind of feel like this could have ended at phase 4, though.
No, because if I had ended it on that chapter, it would have been difficult to stop, I think, because, like, I wanted phase 4 to end when Kurdai died, or, like, I wanted the epilogue to be, like, right after his death, because this next phase 5, is about mourning him and, like, trying to understand the world without him in it. Mm-hmm. So this to me felt like the appropriate starting point.
Okay. Didn't like Bakugo on the phone. I feel like he would have resisted that.
I think you're underestimating how much respect Bakugo held for Kurdai in the end.
Do you think if Deku died, it wouldn't be the same? But I don't know.
I feel like Bakugo probably would be the one to tell All Might or tell Deku's mom or like.
And he has a horrible bedside manner, so it wouldn't go well. But
no, the phone call could hardly be called good bedside manner.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you could see him like actively trying to resist calling Shuken an extra, and I think he does it anyways at some point. Like, I don't know, like him. He was trying. He was trying really hard.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a good question because I think, in this canon, that's where it went. But we've seen, a few really emotionally like high emotion scenes with him. But he's such an unpredictable character in a very predictable way. I don't know. It's a tough
closest.
one.
Okay, so the closest thing I could rely on was apparently Bakugo and I have the same kind of personality, so I decided to try and emulate like what would I do in that situation. Like
you're also not a jerk
most of the time. Like if someone did something to have me change my opinion on them to that degree, like I feel like their family would deserve whatever amount of closure I could give them. So like I don't know. It didn't feel out of character for me.
Okay. All right, but
he wasn't real nice and consoling towards Shuken, or he just told him what happened, and as soon as Shuken was like, "Oh yeah, this one time when we were kids," Bakugo was just like, "Shut up, I'm not here for that."
Yeah.
So,
okay. Yeah. All
right. He didn't call Shuken to tell him what happened. Ida basically it happened off screen, but Ida was basically like, "Here's one of his only living relatives on the phone. He wants to know what happened."
Just puts it in his face. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So I'm too tired to write a haiku, so just play Knights of the Old Republic dweeb.
Okay, first of all, you calling me dweeb when you're the one who normally writes haikus, just you lost all credibility with that.
Oh my god.
Also, if you're not putting in the effort to write a haiku, good luck putting in the effort to getting me to change my mind.
All right. Well, with that being said, thank you, Last Robin, for your review.
Thank you for your review. It's always fun to hear from you.
And we can move into the chapter.
Yep. So, yeah, this will be this will be not a continuation of the last chapter, but more of another shift in perspective.
All right.
I'll let you guys get into it. We'll see you guys for the behind the scenes.
Start to fall as it turns to a pour. We're here again in this storm, but we've been here before. I see the street signs warning, telling me that I had no other place I could go. Feel like I'm stuck in motion, can't find balance. I'm living in a vertigo. Everything is nothing like before. I've tried to hold it together.
There, hero. I see. Tensei said heavily, aware of his mother's worried eyes upon him as he looked out the kitchen window to see the clear noon sky. Thank you for letting us know, Tenya. Please feel free to call me anytime you need to talk, day or night. The phone line disconnected, and he allowed the device to fall into his lap from slack fingers. Without wasting any time, he looked up at his mother and nodded once to confirm their suspicions ever since hearing there had been a single casualty in the Battle of Nabu Island. It was him. He said, his heart breaking anew as the woman's face crumbled in response. Kurai died saving everyone from the villains. How is Tenya? She gasped out as Tensei felt his shoulders drooping from the weight of the information he had just been forced to absorb. He was injured, but Recovery Girl has been able to take care of him, so there is no lasting damage, he answered, glad that the relief in his voice wasn't forced. Even if things had turned out quite badly, he was glad that he did not have to bury his baby brother on top of everything else that had gone down that year. Kurai was the only casualty, apparently. Oh God, this is so awful. His mother sobbed as she tried in vain to dash the tears away. I never imagined anything like this happening to them. Not while they were in school, at the very least. It shouldn't have happened to them, Tensei said, his gaze sharpening tightly as his fist clenched on the armrests of his wheelchair. The anger in his voice did nothing to hide the pain in his eyes as he all but growled. They're only students. Forcing them to take on the roles of fully qualified pros? What was the Safety Commission thinking? His fist slammed down on the right side of his chair as the tears began to fall while he raged. I've been telling them for years that we must look beyond the conventional methods for recruiting new heroes, but they're so damn set in their ways that they... Tensei forced himself to stop shouting as he felt his mother's hands pressing firmly on his shoulders from behind his chair. Doing his best to swallow down the urge to raise his volume even further, he instead breathed out, he was just a boy. How could they allow for something like this to even be possible? Son, you know as well as any hero the risks involved in our family's line of work, the woman said shakily from above him as he refused to look away from his tightened fists. It ought to be unthinkable, but he knew that it could happen. Kurai knew what he was doing in the end, I'm sure. He proved that in Fukuoka. He still shouldn't have had to prove it again, especially not like this, Tensei said with a slow shake of his head. His hand slowly moved to pick up his phone again before he murmured, I won't allow the commission to sweep this aside. Son, situations like this cannot be allowed to occur again, simply because they want to keep up appearances for public image's sake alone, the man said bitterly as he scrolled through his contacts, his eyes moving rapidly across the screen in the process. There are others whom I know will agree with me on this. Even if I cannot run to save people any longer, I will still do what I can to protect those children so they can grow up to save others, but only in their due time. Micah Ashido let out an unrestrained yawn as he stepped off the staircase that led into his parents' kitchen, his blurry caramel-colored eyes just managing to pick out his elder brother sitting at the breakfast bar. Morning, he mumbled, his feet automatically carrying him toward the coffee pot. This afternoon? The two of them were visiting their parents a few weeks before the holiday break from their respective careers, as they would be unable to spend the actual Christmas break with them like Mina would. Mako was quickly making a name for himself as a sharp-tongued and successful prosecutor at the firm he had signed on with, enough so that he was being given a few days off in December, which rarely happened for the junior associates. Micah would still be in university for 2 more years, pursuing a career in commercial architecture, and while he would normally have been more than happy to come home during the actual winter break, there was a firm that he aimed to join after graduation, and one of his upperclassmen had managed to secure him an invite to a private work event where they tended to scout work for new talent. The gathering was technically a Christmas Eve party, which would require him to be back in Nagoya instead of his hometown, so he had elected to request permission from the school to be able to attend his classes and submit his assignments virtually for a few days, which had been granted easily enough. Micah was proud to say that, like his elder brother, he had made it into the dean's list by the end of his second semester at college, which had likely played into the school's decision to let him take his leave without much fuss. Of course, the drawback to this was the hours that he spent during the day with his family had to be made up at night in order to stay on top of his assignments, which was why he had stayed up until midnight finishing yesterday's homework, and then kept going until 2 in the morning so he could get ahead on today's lecture and academic chores. I bet Mina's never stayed up past 9 to get work done, he thought drowsily as his head throbbed, letting him know that despite the sun being well above the horizon, he had not gotten a sufficient amount of rest. As he went to pick up a can of coffee grounds that was always by the sink, he silently relented a little. Oh, Yue doesn't just let anyone in, he reminded himself as he lifted the container, frowning when he realized how light it was. Then there's her boyfriend, probably the only guy I've ever met who would rather get his homework done than do movie and chill. She definitely seems more motivated than I can ever remember her being when he's around. Hey, Mako, he mumbled after opening the lid and seeing nothing more than a slight film of dark dust on the bottom of the canister. Do you know if Mom and Dad have another bag somewhere? It had been some time since he had actually lived in his childhood home, so the memories of where things were supposed to go had grown hazy with disuse and distance. There was also the morning fog that clouded his brain, but even that did not prevent him from realizing that this was now the second time he had prompted his brother since entering the room without receiving a response. Blinking his eyes a little wider, he looked over at Mako to see that the other man was staring at something on his phone, his face an alarming shade of white. Hey, you okay? He prompted as he moved closer, making sure to raise his voice enough so that there would be no way for Mako to miss it. Huh? The older Ashido said as he tore his eyes away from the screen to see Micah looking at him with concern. Sorry, what? I asked if you were okay. His brother answered with a small frown. What's got you so shook, dude? Something happened to the firm? Honestly, I wish. Mako replied as he stood up from his half-eaten sandwich, sending a small thrill of alarm down Micah's body and chasing away his immediate need for coffee. We gotta call Mom and Dad, see if we can't reach Mina. Okay, how's about we pump the brakes a sec until you're barely awake, bro? What's going on? The middle Ashido sibling said, making sure to speak slowly in an attempt to keep his brother from launching into a high-speed explanation of whatever it was that had upset him, as he was wont to do from time to time. I was just watching the national news, Mako explained, making a visible effort to pace his response, having recognized what his brother was trying to do. Some powerhouse gang of villains attacked Nabu Island yesterday, and there's been a casualty. The news isn't saying who it is yet, but if it's just one person who's died, then it was probably one of Sis's classmates. Micah finished for him, feeling the blood drain from his face as he did. They were supposed to be the only heroes on the island, so... Oh, shit. Yeah, Mako said in a clipped tone as he pulled up the contact list on his phone. I hope it wasn't her, but you know how gung-ho she can get. True, but I kind of doubt that Hikari would have let anything happen to her, Micah said with a wobbly grin. Doesn't seem like the type to let his girl get hurt, and we've both seen what he can do when he gets going. There was a moment of awkward silence before Mako announced, I'll call Mina, you get Mom and Dad on the line. Yep. As the men accessed their phones and pulled up the desired contacts, Micah's mind flashed back to a moment that had surprised them both only months prior. 7 months ago. Mina had always been an active, bordering on antsy child. She loved to move about, do things that involved pushing her muscles to the limit, and as she'd grown up, she had learned to channel that need into the art of dance. She was always going 100 miles an hour, never seeming to run out of her boundless reserves of energy as soon as she was awake and ready to face the day. Now that she was in UA's hero course, one of the most physically demanding curriculums in the world, her brothers had thought that she might slow down a bit and mellow out in her spare time. According to their parents, this had not proven to be the case. Even in spite of the attack on their school at the beginning of the year, or perhaps because of said incident, Mina had become even more passionate and animated in her drive to become a hero. Yet, instead of that hyperactivity racing out of control as Mako and Micah might have assumed it would, their kid sister had started to display a focus that reminded their parents of them during their own high school years, as opposed to a petulant rivalry driven by a little girl's need to show up her elder siblings. Their mother also believed that there was an individual more personally responsible for the changes, someone they were apparently about to meet. It was also becoming very obvious that Mina was nervous for the two of them to meet this person. Mako was the first to notice the signs, though Maiko wasn't far behind in realizing them either. Their pink-skinned sibling, as they had noted before, was a bundle of irrepressible energy, and she had no problem letting it out in the form of breakdance whenever the mood struck her. What she had never done before was fidget. Both young men had to keep themselves from laughing as they watched Mina sitting on the couch in the living room, her right leg bouncing up and down in front of her with no particular rhythm as she alternated her gaze between the clock on the wall, the window that displayed their driveway, and the phone sitting on the table in front of her. Is she actually getting the jitters? Micah had to wonder, even as Mako silently nudged him with an elbow so that he would see the text message ready to fly at his command. There was a questioning look in the older brother's eyes, to which Micah responded with a grin and a quick nod. The two of them were standing in the kitchen, their backs to the cabinets and the breakfast bars between them and their victim, a minimum safe distance by their estimates. Deciding to go for it before the opportunity could pass, Mako hit the send button on his phone and awaited the inevitable results. Mina's phone chimed with the notification of a text message, which saw to the girl all but scrambling over her own legs to snatch up the device from the coffee table in front of her. Mako and Micah hidden their laughter with a valiant effort until their sister read the message, causing her face to darken with an angry purple shade as her eyes went wide with disbelief. "You guys suck!" she snarled even as the two of them burst into hysterical laughter. This prevented them from really paying attention to Mina until she had jumped on Mako's back and started hitting his shoulder with her phone while growling like a feral gremlin. "Ouch! Hey!" The oldest Ashido yelped as he registered the pain of those impacts. Meanwhile, Micah had given into another bout of laughter as he watched the other two start to grapple, with his brother not having much luck in the process. Mina had always been athletic, but in just a few short weeks, Yue had already started to toughen up her muscles to an almost steely degree that Mako was unused to. "What the hell?" he thought as he was unable to break free of the chokehold she was now applying to his head. "When did she get this strong?" While not as fit as his sister, Mako had always been able to outmuscle the girl whenever they had tussled in the past, which had essentially established the trope of victory by default for the eldest sibling. This new dynamic had him so confused that he couldn't have tapped out even if he wanted to. Fortunately for Mako, it didn't come to that. Their ears all picked up on the sound of a roaring engine pulling up to their house before quickly cutting out, which led to Mina abandoning her assault on her brother in favor of making a dash for the door. Before Micah could make any sort of comment, however, she picked up an orange from the counter and hurled it with an unnerving accuracy to smack him in the mouth, drawing out a yell that matched his brother's earlier cry. As the pair registered the sounds of the door opening from around the corner, they both exchanged a look while Mako rubbed his neck and coughed out, "We may have deserved that." "I'm thinking we may want to warn this poor guy off," Micah muttered in reply, his fingers exploring the inside of his mouth to make sure he wasn't bleeding. "Jeez, that was vicious." "The guy won the sports festival. I think he could take a hit," Mako wheezed. "He only got the gold because Endeavor's kid tapped out," his brother said dismissively. "That ain't a real win." They were about to start a debate on the topic when the subject of their opposing ideas walked through the door while saying, "Honestly, do I really seem like the kind of guy to break up with somebody over text? That's kind of on you for buying it for a second." Kurdai was grinning as he turned around to look back at the entrance, though he did so in a manner that put his back to the kitchen and the expectant gazes of the Ashido sons in the process. "Hey, you're supposed to be on my side in this," Mina said as she followed the boy with a visible pout. "And yet I get the feeling that you and Akururi are ganging up for what you consider to be a spectacular Kurdai stopped himself mid-sentence as he finally shifted in place enough to see Mina's brothers sitting at the breakfast bar with raised eyebrows and somewhat smug grins on their faces. Sorry," he apologized as he quickly dipped his head in their direction. "I didn't realize you were there." "Nah, don't worry about it," Mako said dismissively with a negative motion from his hand. "Super Saiyans get a pass based on the fact that they could probably kick our asses into orbit without much effort." "Dude, he's clearly a ninja," Micah countered, causing Kurdai's face to tinge red as he got a sense of where this was about to go. "Did you miss those Rasen guns he's got going on there?" As he spoke, he gestured toward the boy's well-built arms, which he now folded as if it were a defensive measure. His quirk makes him too flashy to be a ninja. Tell that to the cast of Naruto, so maybe he's a super ninja? And suddenly everything about you makes complete sense. Kurdai deadpanned as he turned toward his girlfriend, who was once again simmering with a dark look on her face. "I thought Akururi was bad, but at least he gives me a minute to breathe when I first get home." "Yeah, well, upside is that we get to leave these two at home while we go to Island," Mina muttered, sticking her tongue out at her brothers when they straightened up in their seats with surprise as they registered her words. "Wait, you're going to... Isn't there about to be a major expo happening there?" Mako sputtered. "Yep, and sucks to be you guys, because he's out of tickets to share," Mina grinned devilishly. While many people would have gone just to see the heroes who were going to be gathered, as well as the flashy new support items that were to be previewed, the two brothers each had different reasons for wanting to go. For Mako, who was poised to become a prosecuting attorney once he passed the bar exam, it would have been a great opportunity to start establishing relations with hero agencies that might lend him aid in any future cases he might end up working. Meanwhile, Micah would have happily mugged someone for a ticket to the expo so that he could get a first look at the architectural marvels that made up the island itself. Mina knew all of this, of course, which is why she had taken this golden opportunity to rub it in their faces that she had supremely lucked out. Wow, using your boyfriend to take a cheap shot at us? The eldest sibling grumbled. That's low, even for you, sis. I would Nah, you're right, I totally did that, she snickered. What really surprised the two brothers was the fact that Kurt Eye allowed a smile to decorate his face before he added, I don't know if it really counts as using me when it was my idea. Wait, what? Micah gaped. You heard him, Mina giggled before planting a big kiss on Kurt Eye's cheek, turning him flaming red in the process. My guy's the best of the best. Mina, we talked about this. He squawked, his temporary confidence apparently vanishing in the process. PDA's still a no-no for me. Aw. She snickered again. We can always move this somewhere more private if that'd be better. She was mostly teasing him, but she also found it very cute how flustered he could get. The fact that she was getting to pull on over on her brothers in the process was a major bonus. That said, she now knew where to draw the line with him, and thus decided to back it up a bit in order to spare Kurt Eye any further embarrassment on her behalf. She'd gotten her kicks out of her brothers, so now was the time to start working on helping her boyfriend not decide to run out the door, or just plain letting his poor head explode. I don't know what makes my stomach more upset, Micah now muttered in an aside to his brother. Her shamelessness or his shame? I don't want to think about it, Mako grumbled in a similar tone. Thing 1 and Thing 2, meet the butt kicker of all who dare challenge him. Mina grinned as she made an exaggerated sweeping gesture toward her boyfriend, who was still redder than Yayorozu's outfit. Kurai Hikari. Pleased to meet you. The boy managed to get out before offering another perfunctory bow to the two young men. Same here, the elder brother answered as he moved to shake hands with the high schooler. I'm Mako. Lawyer, right? Kurai replied as he took the offered hand, his firm eye contact somewhat surprising the older Ashido in the process. He had thought the confidence played into the joke might have been a fluke, or brought out by wanting to impress Mina, but the grip he used and the way he was carrying himself throughout introductions spoke to a character who knew how to handle himself. Pending final exams, he answered without missing a beat. That was a pretty impressive show you put on for the sports festival. I was personally rooting for the exploding guy. Micah snickered as he moved to take his turn. He looked like good TV. Make stupid bets, win stupid prizes. Could I quip readily? Mina let out a short bark of laughter while her brother looked taken aback by the fact that this kid apparently had the ability to out-sass him after less than 5 minutes of interaction. Why did we agree to meet this guy? Mako muttered just loud enough for everyone in the room to hear. I came for Mom's pancakes, Micah shrugged in reply. So far, this kid hasn't made it not worth it. Was that a challenge they just gave us? Mina inquired as she gave her boyfriend a hopeful look, which caused him to raise the other eyebrow in response. Sounds like it might be. If the words plus ultra come out of either of your mouths before he goes home, I'm grabbing baby photo albums. Micah warned the pair. You wouldn't, Mina shot back, though she didn't look afraid when she said it. This was explained when she added, even you're not stupid enough to rob Mom of getting to show off my baby pictures to my first boyfriend. First boyfriend? Kurt asked, feigning offense, while Micah was silently forced to concede that he was, in fact, not foolish enough to offend their mother in such a manner. What, are you already planning to replace me? Only if someone more handsome than you comes along. She chirped with another evil grin. Fortunately for you, I don't really see that happening anytime soon. The closest competition you've got is Todoroki. He's more pretty than handsome. But what? Her boyfriend sputtered. Scarface? That's who I've got to compete with? Like I said, it's not much of a competition. Mina giggled. Dude, it's not too late to back out, Micah told the younger boy. We'll cover for you while you run. Speak for yourself, Mako said as he edged away from the gathering. You're acid-proof, not me. Wait, what's your quirk then? Kodai asked curiously, his mind quick to change the topic to something he was more comfortable with. Mina never said. Mako gave him a little grin before his skin and hair began to shift colors so they matched Mina. Color shift, he said before reverting to his default colors. A coffee-colored top of hair with fair skin. Doesn't affect my eyes, and I automatically revert to this whenever I fall asleep. It's technically a weaker version of our mom's quirk, Micah explained. She can change any of the colored aspects of her appearance, but she can't do it at will. It depends entirely on her emotions. So, less variety, but a bit more control. Kodai mused, his eyes narrowing slightly with intrigue. Honestly, I'd prefer it that way. Makes it easier to keep your cards close to your chest. Yeah, if I had Mom's exact quirk, I doubt I'd be able to hack it as a lawyer, Mako admitted. Me, I'm pretty much unaffected by any acidic substance you could think of, Micah interjected, explaining his brother's earlier comment. The pH factor in my body has never gone over or below 7.41 because any excess acid that I am exposed to gets absorbed by my horns. Wait, they do what now? Kurt, I asked with wide eyes. They store any excess acid that my body ingests, which is kind of cool because I never get heartburn no matter how spicy my food is. Micah chuckled. Doctor calls it pH control. It's technically an absorb and release ability, which comes in handy now that I know how to regulate it. The only thing is that every now and again my horns reach a storage capacity and I have to chop off the tips to let the acid out. Doesn't hurt though. Feels kind of like cutting nails. Wait, I thought you said your body wouldn't be affected by amounts of acid. The guest inquired with a puzzled look on his face. Does it leak back into your body if you don't? No, it actually secretes out of the horns on its own, which kind of caused a few accidents when I was younger, Micah admitted sheepishly. I'm still not convinced you didn't let that acid fall on me on purpose. Mina grumbled. First of all, I'm not that evil, Micah muttered. Second, your quirk manifested super early, so we knew you'd be fine. Which is exactly why I don't believe you that it was an accident. Hang on, do your horns do that? Could I ask Mina to head off another argument, who immediately shook her head in the negative. Nah, they're just there for decoration, she answered with another grin. Basically, my horns and whole color theme are like how your brother got his eye color from your mom, but not the X-ray vision. Makes sense. And what about you, Super Saiyan Hokage? Micah asked through another smug grin, which got Kurai's left eye to twitch with annoyance. We saw what your quirk could do in the battle part of the festival, but what the heck even is it? It's kind of hard to explain in one go, so I'll say that it's an emitter augmentation hybrid called Energon. Kurai answered as he folded his arms again. Doctors have run 101 tests on me, but they've honestly never been able to figure out what produces the energy in my body. Seems like it's an almost infinite source. There was a brief moment of silence before Micah said, if this were a game, I'd accuse you of hacking. There's no way a quirk that good just exists. It ain't all fun and games. Kurai muttered, his expression briefly turning dark to a degree that took the two brothers aback. And whatever the hell All Might's quirk is, it makes him way stronger than me. Almost as soon as the angry look had come, it suddenly vanished, leaving the boy with an almost disturbingly neutral expression on his face. Before either of the boys could start to wonder what all that was about, they heard the garage door opening, which meant that their parents were about to come in. This was Mina's cue to grab her boyfriend by the hand and lead him down the hallway, ignoring the yelp of protest that he uttered as she insisted he meet them as soon as possible. As they watched the pair of them go, Micah said in an aside to his brother, what do we think of him? He's weird, but I think he knows how to hold his own against her, and in his own way, Mako answered. Yeah, he's going to need to, knowing her. The middle sibling snickered. When she gets going on something, I think I'd have better chances not getting flattened by a bulldozer if I tried to stop her. Yeah. I can see that she really likes him, the elder said with a quiet chuckle. Never seen her get that nervous before. I'd hoped you could see that. Micah now grumbled as he massaged his lip, which was already starting to swell a bit. I'm going to be filling it every time I eat for the next few days. There was another brief pause before he asked, what are the odds I could get you to sue her for physical and psychological trauma once she's made it big as a pro? No one's going to convict her over a swollen lip, and you've been a psycho since you were born. Mako replied as he moved to greet their parents, who sounded as though they were having a grand time in meeting Kurai. That jury won't even have to step out the door to make a decision. Man, what good are you? Present day. Any luck? Mako asked as he walked back into the room to see his brother looking nothing short of despondent, causing a line of sweat to break out on his own brow. Mina isn't picking up her. Hikari's dead. Those two words were enough to cause the phone in Mako's hand to drop and clatter across the wood floor of the house. Dead? Him? Yeah, Micah said heavily, his eyes dull as he did. Mom and Dad got a call from 1A's homeroom teacher. He let them know that Mina's injuries weren't very serious and she'll make a full physical recovery. Physical recovery? Mako repeated, still trying to process the bomb that had just been dropped on him. Dude, how do you think she's handling this? Micah asked while looking up at his brother. She loved that guy. Like, really loved him. She's not eating. Nobody's really sure she's spending most of her time sleeping, just catatonic. Nobody's been able to even get a word out of her, apparently. That bad? Mako breathed. I knew that she really liked him, but she's seriously that messed up over it? Dude, how would you... Oh, right. You don't know yet. I don't know what. Micah closed his eyes and rubbed at them with his free hand before saying in a slow, low voice, they asked Mom and Dad for their blessing to get married once they finished high school. What? Mom let it slip when she picked me up from the train station the other day, but swore me to secrecy because Mina wanted to tell us over the video. the younger man said sadly. Jeez. She's always been so damn obnoxious and gone on and on about finding her stupid Prince Charming ever since she was little, and then she actually found him. Now, man, what are we gonna do? What the hell are we supposed to do? Mako sputtered in confusion. I don't know anything about helping somebody deal with losing a loved one. Let's be real, I doubt she really wants to hear from us right now. I left a dozen unanswered voicemails that tells me how much she cares about what we can do right about now. The guy was going to be our brother-in-law, man. Micah insisted as he let his head rest between his hands. I know you and I don't exactly get on great with Mina, but she is our sister, and Hikari seemed like an honestly good guy. He didn't deserve to die like that, and she doesn't deserve the heartbreak she has to be going through right now. He paused before turning to look more directly at his brother and asked, if something like this had happened to me, what would you do? Maybe we could figure out how to go from there. You really think that's going to work? Mako asked dryly. She's very different from us. Yeah, but there's got to be something we can relate to her on, Micah said firmly. We got to do something, anything we can do for her when she gets back. Mako was quiet for a few moments before he put his chin between his fingers and murmured, she really did love him. Maybe we can do something to honor him? I mean, he deserves all our respect. I know I respected him, especially after that time in Fukuoka. 2 months ago. Hey, Ashido. Someone, the young lawyer wasn't sure who, shouted from over his cubicle, which he decided to ignore. Peering intently at the paper in front of him, he did his best to force the blurry figures to make sense, though it was getting a lot more difficult after staring at nearly identical documents for the last 10 hours with only a 20-minute lunch break. I got it. I get wanting to take a villain for everything they're worth, but do these bank managers really think I can magic them up some money that doesn't even exist? Or worse, belongs to someone else? He fumed silently. Them fudging these numbers and blaming it on poor bookkeeping is just as bad as what the villains did in the first place. That money either belongs to another bank that these goons robbed or... Ashido, seriously, the voice yelled again, disrupting his train of thought in the process. You need to look at this. What? He snapped as he slammed his hands down on the desk and got to his feet while snarling. What could be so important that you had to interrupt... Mr. Takabayashi? Mako gulped when he felt sweat bead on his brow as he realized he had just yelled at one of the firm's partners with higher seniority and prestige than he would probably ever achieve himself. That is to say, how can I help you, sir? I am so fired, he added in a quiet panic to himself. Kid, while I appreciate the enthusiasm you put into your work, you need to take a coffee break every now and again, the older man said dismissively. And the Sonomi case can wait for a couple of minutes. You really need to come and see this. Why? What happened? The younger lawyer inquired, breathing a sigh of relief as he registered with him that his employment wasn't about to be terminated. It's on just about every news station, his boss said as he gestured for him to follow along toward the firm's rec room. Endeavor's fighting some kind of monster. A monster? Mako repeated, his curiosity honestly depleting in that moment. As in a villain with a mutant-type quirk? Maybe he's excited about the clientele we might get out of this? No, as in a real monster, Takabayashi answered hurriedly as they neared the room. I really don't think that what he's fighting is human. Hawks has even teamed up with him, and it doesn't seem to be going well for them. Wait, the top two heroes in the country can't... What kind of villain is that? Mako asked, his eyes wide and curiosity now in full control of his speech. As they approached the room, there was a collective growl of annoyance and discontent from the members gathered inside, which, judging by the empty desks and cubicles, might have been just about everyone who was in the office that afternoon. What happened? His boss demanded as they walked in, every eye trained on the 100-inch TV that was mounted on the wall. Is the fight over already? No, they switched to something else. One of the other partners, Takumi, if Mako's tired mind was recalling information correctly at the moment. There's another one of those monsters tearing up Fukuoka, but the hero fighting it is a total unknown. Given how close to being brain dead Mako was at that moment, it was no wonder that it took him a few seconds to realize that the figure trading blows... that he took him to recognize the figure trading blows with the beastly villain. Hey, wait! He shouted before he could stop himself when another member of the firm suggested changing the channel. I know that kid. What, kid? A woman sputtered. That's a kid up there? There's no way, another objected. I'm telling you, I know him, Mako insisted as he shouldered his way through the small crowd, not caring who he was moving aside as he did. If he'd been in better control of his faculties at that moment, he would have realized he was being very rude to a number of influential seniors, but at that time, the only thing he could focus on was the blue and orange-clad hero doing his best to avoid getting killed as he tore through a city park with a pitch-black monster. The second he was close enough to be positive, he managed to gape out, Holy... It really is him! Who is that, Ashido? One of the newer partners demanded. Spit it out or let us change the channel. He won the UA Sports Festival freshman year, he answered as he looked briefly over his shoulder. That's a UA student? Another member said in disbelief. Their school's nowhere near there. I'm telling you, it's the guy, Mako insisted. Kurai Hikari. Look him up. Robot arms, survived 2 League of Villain attacks, UA Sports Festival winner, etc. He's almost as strong as All Might. He could throw lasers fast enough to make Goku jealous. Holy crap, I think he's right, said one of the junior associates who was looking down at her phone. It definitely looks like him. As if on cue, the reporters then chose up to bring the imagery and other necessary information to prove that this was, in fact, who Mako said he was. How'd you know it was him? I've met him a few times at my parents' place, he answered distractedly. Wait, you actually know this kid? One of the more senior associates inquired. Yeah, he's my kid sister's boyfriend. Mako spitted another glance over his shoulder to see everyone's looks of surprise before he added, What? I know people outside of this office. There was a small frown that stole across his face as he added, Really not sure what he's doing in Fukuoka, though. There was a brilliant flash of light from the TV, causing everyone to look back up and witness the young hero leg sweep the monster and blast it with a precise laser to take a chunk out of its shoulder, which promptly exploded with some kind of gray fluid. Oh man, that's gross! One of the women all but gagged. As the fight started to pick up the pace, Takabayashi once again turned to his junior and asked, Does he have a hero name or does he just go by his given name? Kurai, was it? He calls himself the Guardian Hero, Mako answered after having to think about it for a moment. Kai. Yeah, that's his name. Kai. Hey, I think they're switching it back to Endeavor and Hawks. Finally. Wait, no! Mako protested, though the news station paid him no heed. Ah, damn it! What's the big deal, Ashido? Takumi said dismissively. Some real heroes are going to come along and save the kid from drowning any minute. Of course they're switching back to where the real action is. Mako forced himself to take in a deep breath before he turned to face his seniors and say, That kid has been more heroic in high school career than anyone I could name except for maybe All Might. This isn't the first time he's fought one of those monsters, you know. He fought one when the League first attacked UA, held it off long enough for All Might to get there and save the day, almost getting killed in the process so that my sister and their friends, classmates at the time, seeing as they barely knew each other, wouldn't have to be in danger. His fists clenched as he went on to growl, Look, he stopped terrorists from taking over Island with All Might. And when the League came after his friends with a damn cannibal villain, he let his arm get eaten so that one of his peers could make a getaway. That metal arm isn't for show. He even took down the Shia Saikai Yakuza boss while the pro heroes couldn't do anything about it. Gesturing at the image of Endeavor and Hawks continuing to do battle across the city, he then added, Endeavor's all about the show, always has been, probably always will be. Kai, that kid you were talking about, that's what a real hero looks like. There was an awkward stretch of silence before it was broken by a surprising source. Someone find a station showing Kai's fight, Takabayashi said peaceably, startling Mako in the process. Sir? Endeavor becoming number 1 only happened because All Might had to retire, the older man said with a shrug. It more or less happened by default. It sounds to me as though this Kai will be worth observing far more than old news. I'm curious to see what he's made of for Ashido to speak so adamantly on the matter. Mako's face flushed red as it finally started to dawn on him that once again, he had more or less yelled at his bosses and senior coworkers, which could well end up being the death of his career if he didn't act fast. My apologies, sir. I shouldn't have. Just try to keep that sort of spitfire to a minimum in the office. Takabayashi chuckled while some of the others started to look for a channel that would fit their required criteria. It's not a bad thing to be so passionate, young man. Just be sure to temper it a bit so you don't embarrass us in court. The last part was still delivered with a smile, but Mako could recognize the underlying tension beneath it. Yes, sir. Even as the TV also started to shift from channel to channel, Mako found himself wondering why on earth had he gotten so defensive on behalf of a kid that he barely knew on a personal level. Was it because he was tied to Mina? That didn't seem likely, seeing as he had never really needed to look out for her that way. So, why would he feel the need to do so for Hikari? He could clearly handle himself. Nor did he seem like the type to care about his reputation, given that he had arrested his own mother, and brought his father's crimes to light at great cost to said reputation. And yet, in spite of that, he mused to himself as he pulled out his phone and shot a brief message to his brother. No one ever sticks up for him. I mean, Mina, I'm sure she does at school, but out there in the adult world, his family name doesn't exactly bring people cheering to the rooftops. The firm managed to find another channel that was covering Kai's fight, and what they saw immediately disturbed everyone there on a deep level. In the span of 20 seconds, 2 of the 4 heroes who had shown up to help the boy were slaughtered by the Nomu in grotesque fashion, even as their partners were turned into monsters themselves, leaving the Guardian hero all alone on the battlefield as more and more mutates gathered around to attack, assumedly under the control of the first monstrosity. For a brief moment, Kai seemed to get his second win, despite taking a heavy strike to the head and nearly getting hauled off by what the commenters were now calling the Shadow Nomu. He blasted it and the twisted civilians away with an impressive show of power, giving Mako hope that perhaps he would be able to pull through on his own. That hope quickly died when the boy was then pinned beneath and crushed by one of the mutates that had some kind of expanding quirk, making it all but impossible to even see Kai's arms and legs as they were sprawled out beneath it. One of the associates wondered if he might already be dead, which Mako prayed would not be the case. Not in a time when society needed a hero with his kind of grit and sheer power. Come on, Hikari, he thought, not even daring to breathe as the anchors also began to ponder if they hadn't just witnessed a child hero's death in real time. Don't prove Mina wrong about being as great as she says you are. You gotta get up, man. Just as the news station was about to give up hope themselves, the audience let out a collective gasp and shout of surprise when an even brighter flash of light than before shone from where Kai had been pinned down. When it cleared, there was the battered Guardian hero, on his knees, but looking like he was ready to keep going. Yeah! Mako hollered before he could stop himself. Get him! There was a half second where he thought he might die of embarrassment, but then Takumi surprised him by yelling, Let's see what you got, kid! Don't tell me Ashido overhyped you. Send that thing back wherever it came from! As others began to add their own chants of encouragement, Mako noticed that something about Kai was beginning to change rapidly. Before he could pick up on exactly what it was, his jaw dropped as the boy's speed kicked into a new gear, and the energy he had been utilizing changed colors into a bright scarlet. Dozens of mutates went after him, but no matter what quirk they used, no matter how many tried to team up to take him down, they couldn't even touch him. What the... How long has he been able to do that? Mako sputtered in disbelief. Is this new? I guess? Before the firm could scarcely believe it, Kai had taken down every single mutate in the area, without a single casualty among them either. Following that, he started driving the Nomu into a corner at a breakneck pace that showed just how much he had been holding back thus far. Or rather, they thought he had stopped holding back. There was a brief lull in the fight on both sides, but no one in that building even thought that the boy was about to throw in the towel just yet, not when victory was at hand for him. What's he doing now, Ashido? Takabayashi inquired, though his eyes remained fixated on the screen. I, honest to goodness, have no idea, sir. The answer that was not long in coming left everyone in the room with dropped jaw from the moment it began. Kai's body shed the red light and allowed for an orange shade to infuse his hair before the camera's imagery shuddered from the impact of a concussive force that sent the Nomu skyward, higher than the clouds in the afternoon air. Kai had just delivered a thunderous kick that All Might would have envied, and now he was pursuing his prey. The boy literally went from a deep crouch to the heights of a mountain peak in less than a second, making it almost impossible to track where he had gone. Is that kid flying now? Someone gaped. Shut up, I can't see where he went. How is me shutting up going to help you? Everyone? Mako said to head off any bickering as the screen started to flicker again. What is that? There was a blinding flash of yellow light, followed by a sharp zapping sound and the drone camera shorting out, leaving the anchors and watching lawyers in a state of utter bewilderment. Wait, what just happened? Yet another associate protested. Did he win? Is he dead? What's going on over there? Guys, another partner said as she tapped on the window overlooking the city, drawing their attention to her in the view. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that way is Fukuoka, right? Even as she spoke, they could just make out the fading glow of a fire pillar. Not that such an image held their attention in the slightest right then. No, in that moment, they were encompassed by the sight of a yellow light that was rapidly expanding in the sky over their country, quickly growing so bright that they could not even look at it directly without some form of visual protection. Is Kai really doing that? An older woman guessed. That monster used some kind of shadow power, so it's gotta be, answered her assistant. Fukuoka is almost 1,000 kilometers away, Takumi breathed in disbelief. And that attack is so bright that I can't look at it from here? What is that kid made out of? One of the earlier naysayers now demanded of no one in particular. I pity the insurance companies are going to have to deal with the collateral that's got to be causing. Good thing you took it to the sky, right? Can you imagine if that had happened on the ground? By this moment, the light was beginning to fade on the horizon, which caused Mako to look back at the TV, hoping that they might be able to get a better look at what had become of Kai and his opponent. There was a couple of moments when he felt his mouth drying out again, as there were some functional camera crews on the ground who were trying to find the boy, but were unable to do so. When they did find him, however, the situation almost became even worse to witness. Kai was free-falling toward the earth from the stratosphere, and it appeared as though he might be unconscious. Mako began to wobble, only being kept steady by one of Takabayashi's assistants, whom he thanked with an absent tone. Oh God, if he's dead. He was once again cut off in his thoughts before it could be finished, and a surge of adrenaline and excitement swept through him as Kai suddenly righted himself in the air and swung his body toward a skyscraper so that he could dig his metal arm into it and fire laser bursts beneath his feet to slow himself down enough to retreat from terminal velocity. Come on, 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 come on! He all but chanted to himself. Come on, Kai, you got this! Pull through! There was a ground-shaking crash that left a big crater in the street next to the building, even as debris and shards of broken glass rained down into the aftermath of the impact. Mako didn't breathe, didn't think. He could do nothing but wait and see. After all that, could Hikari had just been some kid with a half-baked quirk who got in over his head? But against all odds, he let out a shout of relief and elation when a bruised and cut-up fist shot up out of the rubble, followed by the incredibly beaten, but very much alive, Hiro, who took a moment to stand tall, even in spite of his wrenched arm and dozens of other injuries, including a deep cut on his face that was certain to leave a scar. Many others in the office were also letting out exclamations of surprise and delight as they bore witness to the rise of the new defender of the people, though they were quick to quiet down when it seemed that, against all belief, he was going to address the camera crew that had been closest to the impact site. Ha! They heard him all laugh flatly. Not dead. Mako couldn't help but let out a short bark of laughter at that statement, which got a few of the others to take their own turns laughing while the poor news lady tried to make sense of what to do with that overly simple statement. Of course, they were also quick to quiet down when Kai began to deliver his response to her request for elaborations, each of them eager to hear what their new hero had to say. It means that I am Kai, the guardian hero from UA High School, the boy grunted, obviously fighting through a tremendous amount of pain to do so. And I just want to tell everyone out there, hero and villain alike, that I'm not going anywhere anytime soon. Kid just got done fighting a monster. He's already calling out the rest of the villains? Another associate said with a mixture of disbelief and wonder. Kid's got stones. Shut up, Matsuda! The rest of the office yelled at him, causing him to shuffle away in embarrassment. They were just in time to hear Kai continue with the words, I've worked too hard, I've come too far, and lost too much to be stopped now. He sucked in a deep breath before glaring into the lens of the camera and raising his metal fist, which was attached to his horribly dislocated shoulder, and saying with a voice that rang with absolute power and authority, I am here to stand my ground. The office was once again filled with the sounds of cheering, this time aided by clapping and other shouts of affirmation. In the midst of this, Mako's phone buzzed with a message from Micah, which turned out to read, Her boyfriend officially terrifies me. I'm never picking on her, ever again. Shaking his head with another dried chuckle, he sent back the short reply, same. As he allowed the device to find its way back to his pocket, he turned to see that Kurai was then being led away by medical officers who would transport him to the nearest hospital for treatment and care. He was relieved to see this. After all, it wouldn't make for a very good epilogue of this amazing battle if the hero were to suddenly collapse from pain and blood loss on national television. I get the feeling this is going to go beyond Japan's news before long. He thought as he found himself sitting on a bar stool that had become unoccupied, his body finally beginning to register the tension that he had been retaining until now. Hashido, you better watch yourself from now on, Takabayashi said, a strange little warning note in his voice as he did that immediately brought all the tension back. Sir? He asked as he sat up straight in front of the older man. He was somewhat surprised when his senior gave him a look of concern before saying, He just called out an entire nation's worth of villains. That means anyone associated with him may one day end up being targeted to use against him as leverage. That's not even factoring our line of work where we make plenty of enemies with dangerous people on a daily basis. It may not happen today, but someday, mark my words, villains will come after you and your family if your sister remains by his side. A dozen different things that he could say came to Mako's mind right then, but the thing he decided on almost surprised him more than his boss. Well, sir, if he's the guy she happens to stick with, I'd have to applaud her for it, he said with a sheepish grin as he scratched the side of his face. Because, quite frankly, I don't see how she's going to do any better than that guy. Endeavor wasn't one for construction efforts. The closest thing to it was when his agency dealt with rescue operations, though such matters were mostly handled by his sidekicks. As a matter of fact, he had only come to Nabu Island to take care of the villains who had proven to be a threat, as well as make sure that Shoto was alright. His original intent had been to deal with the criminals and then return to the mainland as quickly as possible, but he elected to stay for 2 extra days after learning of one pressing matter that had taken him entirely by surprise. While he had initially been glad to see his son alive and well, the return of Shoto's freezing cold shoulder had taken him aback, until he learned exactly what had happened. The Guardian Hero's death had shocked everyone who had come to help, military personnel and heroes alike, with the normally callous Endeavor proving to be no exception. After their individual battles in Fukuoka and a subsequent conversation with the boy in the hospital, he had started to take an interest in Kai. He'd even gone so far as to send an informal invitation to intern at his agency through Shoto, something that he never would have crossed his mind mere weeks ago, though he had never received a reply. Not that it surprised him. He was well aware of Kodai's disapproval of him, and had been for some time. Though he had been slow to recognize him on their second meeting, he had been able to recall the young man who had stood up to him in the hallways beneath the sports festival arena, and then fought his son to a stalemate in the finals. Most people in his life either tried to avoid him out of a sense of fear or resentment, and those who didn't were largely under his employ. Never before had anyone, much less a child, had the gall to stand up to him with such a defiant manner, and possess the power to back their words. Even when Shoto had chosen to rebel against his methods, he had done so in a rather passive manner, at least where his father was directly concerned. He had certainly never threatened Endeavor with physical violent retribution for his actions, and Kodai doing so had infuriated him at the time. Lately, though, he had found himself begrudgingly recognizing the courage that it would have taken a teenager, even one as powerful and connected as Hikari, to take such a hard stance against him. This wasn't even taking into account the fact that he had willingly tangled with a monstrous Nomu on 2 separate occasions, and even emerging victorious from the second bout. Grit like that was hard to come by, and the Flame Hero could recognize that Kai was on a fast track to success because of it. His power certainly made him special, but more than that was the drive and mind that had gotten him to become a legend in the eyes of Japan's people, much like another who had gone before him. And yet here I remain while men like All Might and Kai have faded away, he thought as he absently torched a pile of rotting wood, reducing it to ash in a mere 2 seconds. What kind of world has come about, that a boy is more a hero than any of the people he was supposed to be looking up to? His eyes caught sight of Shoto, working with one of the other students to prop up some construction materials with its ice and some kind of tape. His son's face was harder than he had ever seen it, even when he had made an oath to never rely on the flames of hellfire in order to take his own victory against the man who had, in a word, spawned him. Shoto admired Kai, perhaps even more so now. I can only hope that admiration doesn't lead him down the same path that I carved out for Toya. He shuddered at the memory of his firstborn, and how his fate had been sealed by his own lack of words to address the anxieties that had eaten away at him, leaving only the consuming flames he had inherited from his father to guide him. I set him on the path of self-destruction to fulfill my own ambition, and then I left him to wander it all alone, he thought as he swallowed past a lump in his throat. Kai showed Shoto the true resolve of a hero who keeps his word, and now he's gone. He wants to be like him, to be as strong and brave as his friend was in the end. Even I can see that. Just like how Toya wanted to be like me. Endeavor bit his lip hard enough to draw blood as his fist shook with the weight of being forced to wonder if his youngest would soon be engulfed by the same flames that had devoured his eldest. Fat Gum was well known for being approachable and eager to make newcomers feel welcome in his presence. Some could even say that he had the habit of wearing his heart on his sleeve, which Yamajiki had always agreed with. In a silent manner, of course. He had seen his mentor overly excited, angry, confused, just about any emotion. Except for the one that he was seeing right now. Tamaki, Fat Gum's voice caught in his throat as he wiped his eyes and looked down at his untouched food, a heaping platter of his favorite meatballs. You should have a seat. His tone of voice and body language were sending chills throughout Amajiki's body in a way he hadn't experienced before, though he moved to do as his boss suggested, quickly occupying one of the smaller chairs opposite the large hero's side of the desk. As if I didn't have enough to worry about every time I step out of the door of my room. He gulped as he contemplated what this newfound anxiety would do to him, forget whatever Fat Gum was about to tell him. He had just come in to fill out the paperwork necessary for him to return to the agency for his final semester's work study a little early, per the man's request. The holidays were an unfortunately hectic time for pro heroes, so he figured it was best to take care of the dry material before the busy work could really get started. So what's going on that put it on hold? Tamaki, You heard about how Class 1A from your school was sent to Nabu Island, right? His mentor asked in a slow, measured pace that kept the alarm bells in the back of his charge's head ringing loud and clear. Yes, sir, he answered as quickly as he could ever manage. Kirishima had brought it up with him at one of the last lunch periods of the semester. He had seemed even more excited than when he had been accepted as a work-study student, which was saying a lot for the kid. It nearly overwhelmed the shy senior, but fortunately for him, Nejire had more or less driven the redhead off with her own barrage of questions before it could to be too much for him. There was a villain attack there yesterday, Fatgum said in a quiet tone, which sent an even colder chill down the boy's spine and drawing a sharp breath out of him. Most of your schoolmates are okay. They even managed to defeat the villains before the pros had arrived. There was the barest hint of a smile cracking his comically large mouth as he said this, but the light humor was incredibly short-lived. Most of them? Amajiki replied, feeling his mouth dry out in the brief process of speaking those 3 words. His mind worked rapidly before he was able to ask, did something happen to Kirishima and Hikari? Red Riot is fine, Fatgum said with a small concession of relief that was also horrifically short-lived. But Hikari, he didn't make it. There was a moment of deafening silence before Amajiki found himself able to ask, Hikari? As in Kai Hikari? Yeah. Fatgum rubbed at the spot between his eyebrows while he went on. I just got a call from Red a few minutes ago. Said that Hikari had a few words for you and me that he left in a message just in case things went south. Amajiki's lower lip trembled before he managed to croak out past the Sahara levels of dryness in his throat. Why would someone like him leave any words for me? I didn't do anything to help him while he was here. Ever since his first day at our agency, he's shone brighter than almost anyone I've ever known. He watched you, Sun Eater, Fatgum assured him. I don't know all of what he thought of us, but I know he watched you and how you acted as a hero while he was with us. He remembered you at the end. That tells me he must have thought pretty highly of you to leave you some of his last words. You said that the message was for both of us. Amajiki shrugged while he pulled his hoodie over his brow. You were his mentor. I'm just a tag-along, I'm sure. You're wrong, the BMI hero insisted. His last message to us was that he wanted to say sorry for not being able to make it to next semester's work study. But he specifically wanted you to have the confidence in yourself that you deserve. He said that? Fatgum smiled bleakly at his protege before admitting, well, apparently his exact words were, it was a lot of fun working with you guys. I wish we'd been able to see Amajiki get over his shy guy act. At that, the third year's face fell even further while he muttered, using his last words to get in a joke. Figures. Hey, come on, his mentor insisted. You know he didn't mean it like that. He had a pretty dry sense of humor, yeah, but he never mocked you or Red Riot for your efforts, did he? In his own way, I think he really wanted to encourage you to reach the potential that we all see in you. When the boy remained silent, Fatgum decided to add, you know, he could have gone to higher-ranked heroes or tagged along with Lemillion to Night Eye's place, but he came here because he wanted to learn what makes you and me the heroes that we are. With all due respect, sir, Amajiki said past the lump in his throat, what good was it for him to learn here if he just ended up dead anyway? To that, Fatgum had no reply, and as he realized this, the faint traces of the smile he had been trying to keep up faded away completely. Thank you for contacting me, All Might. Don't thank me for this, please, the haggard voice of the former number 1 hero said from the other end of Gang Orca's office phone line. I just thought the young Hikari might prefer if you didn't find out from a media source. Given his disposition to the media in general, I can't say that I disagree with you, the killer whale hero acknowledged. You have my sympathies, sir. Please let me know if there's anything I can do for you and the UA faculty regarding this matter. Just that you encourage any investigative journalists to respect the privacy of the young man and his family in this time, All Might replied. I know they will have to be addressed eventually, but I would rather allow his family and friends the time that they'll need to get through this mess. Of course. Thank you, gang. All Might seemed to sigh in relief. I've got to go, but expect an invitation to the funeral when we're able to get to it. I'm sure that young Hikari would appreciate your presence. There was a brief chuckle from the former hero before he added, so many people wanted him to be like me, but no matter how many times he heard that, he was quick to insist on how much he wanted to become a hero like you. Even in spite of your decision not to take him on for a work study, his admiration for you and all that you've accomplished never wavered. When it became clear that was the entirety of what he had to say, Gang Orca merely said, Thank you again. Good luck with everything on Naboo. Take care. As the phone found its way back into the receiver, the whaleman finally allowed himself a moment to press his fingers against his thick eyelids to try and massage the burning sensation out of them while tears seeped out of the corners. Could I have helped to prevent this? He found himself wondering. If I had overseen his training when he came to me again... No. He shook his head and lowered the hand while drawing in a deep breath as he forced the train of thought to come to a halt. The villains are the ones to blame for all of this, the large hero told himself as he clenched his clawed fists. Fat Gum was the one to better show him the path he could walk at that time in his journey, not me. I trust that he taught Kai everything that he could with the time that they had together, and that he put the knowledge to use in a way that exemplified the kind of hero he truly wanted to be. All Might had said that Kai admired the path of heroism that he had taken throughout the course of his life, but he wondered if perhaps the man had unintentionally exaggerated the factor of his student's admiration. True, the both of them had faced a great deal of ostracizing throughout their younger years, he for his appearance and Hikari for his lineage. He could see the similarities in their respective motivations, but at the same time, there was an important difference to be made between them. Gang Orca had sought to prove people wrong about him being likened to a monster that would give their own mother nightmares. The approval of the citizens of Japan meant a great deal to him, and to be ranked in the top 10, to achieve such an envied pinnacle of prestige and admiration, had seemed like a dream that could have never come true when he was a child. Even now, having been taken down to number 12, it had been enough for him to know that even someone like him could stand out as an example to those who doubted their worth based on whatever aspect of their quirk they might view as a curse instead of a blessing. Kai, on the other hand, didn't give a damn about what civilians thought of him. When Gang Orca had realized this, he had been thoroughly taken aback by the boy, as he had initially assumed that he had come to his agency in order to make use of the prestige that it would grant him as a potential sidekick. The pro-hero had been quick to realize that nothing could have been further from the truth when Hikari took to whatever duty he was assigned with an immaculate diligence and an utter lack of complaint, even when burdened with mundane janitorial duties. Other interns in the past had often complained that they had come to the esteemed agency in order to learn from one of the best pros about heroism, not how to scrub a deck, but not so with Kai. He learned what was taught, and he executed orders with a swiftness and competency that put a number of his actual sidekicks to shame. The boy was not without a desire to prove himself. He was simply very selective about whose approval he sought. While Gang Orca did not feel that way himself, it didn't stop him from admiring the boy for his resolve concerning the matter. It would have been very easy for a boy like him to bask in the praise that people had begun to render unto him, in spite of his familial ties to the Japanese police superintendent, or even to throw it back in the public's face for the sudden turnaround in their attitude toward him. But he had remained entirely indifferent to the applause, refusing to allow such thoughts to affect his hero work in the slightest. Then there was the matter with his uncle's killer. If he had taken his revenge in that moment, I truly could not have blamed him for it. Gang Orca had admitted to himself more than once. It may well have been the death of his hero career, but in a karmic sense, one could even argue that he would have been justified. But instead, he had been utterly shocked and relieved when Kai had, through a supreme effort of self-control and willpower, chosen the high road. In the midst of a moment that could have undone any number of pros that he could name, Gang Orca had witnessed a child choose the path of true heroism and render justice upon a man who had put his family through hell. I don't know what you thought you had to learn about being a hero from me, Hikari, the weeping pro thought as he held his head in his hands. The truth is that if I could somehow find it in myself to be a hero with the resolve that you lived and died with, I would count myself well lived indeed. The atmosphere in the streets of Japan had changed at an alarming rate in just a few short days following the news of Kai's death. Not only were many of the citizens discouraged by the loss of the champion who would someday supplant Endeavor and return the heroes to their nation to the days of glory, as it had been in the time of All Might, but the Heroes Public Safety Commission had suddenly come under an alarming amount of fire. Spearheading the campaign against their current administration and handling of affairs concerning work-study heroes in particular was a small, but very vocal, group of heroes led by the former Pro Ingenium, consisting of both active and retirees. Pro heroes ranking as high as Gang Orca and Ryukyu had come forward to lend their voices to the movement, which had caught the somewhat startled interest of the general public. There was even talk of the organization leaders being taken to public courts to answer for crimes against minors, a case that a rising prosecuting lawyer named Ashido seemed rather eager to be a part of. However, given his indirect personal ties with the deceased hero, it could well end up being that he would be barred from taking any part of the official proceedings, though a couple of the partners at the firm he worked for seemed to be willing to handle things in his stead, if that did turn out to be the case. For many, it had not been as devastating as the loss of All Might, but to others, this tragedy was far more pronounced. One such group was making their way to one of the popular parks in Mustafa for a week after the news hit the internet. There were children of many ages in this gathering bringing their parents and guardians, ranging from early grade school to sophomores in high school. They came from many different wards and families, but once word had gotten out about the fall of Kai, a few of the older kids started reaching out to their acquaintances and encouraging them to do the same with their mutual contacts concerning something that they all agreed should be done. These children had very little in common, so to see them unite in this manner would have been incredibly strange under any other circumstances. However, there were two common factors that they all shared. The first being that earlier in the year, they'd all been chained to either one another or to the bars of the cages that held them prisoner to some of the most despicable creatures to walk the face of the earth. The second thing tying them all together was the memory of a young hero, dressed in blue and orange, who shone with a brilliant light, swooping in out of nowhere to save them from their captors. In their minds, he shone like a star as he blasted through the villains with ease, even going so far as to save many of them from a collapsing walkway by intercepting the debris with his own body, placing himself in great peril in the process so that they would not suffer any further harm. Ever since Kai had come to rescue them, these children and their families, for those who still had them, had watched the Guardian Hero's career unfold with great interest. Some of these same people had learned that there was another unofficial vigil being held in Fukuoka by the people he had helped to save from becoming permanent Nomu mutates, so the mourning for the young hero was by no means a local event. Not everyone that the leaders had reached out to could make it, but by the time the crowd in Mustafa had assembled, there were nearly 200 of the rescued children gathered with their siblings and parental figures. Among them in the fading light of the afternoon sun were many a lit candle and flowers being placed at the base of a large portrait someone had printed in the likeness of the deceased hero. There were many quiet conversations among the parents and children alike as they became reacquainted with one another and spoke of the hero who had brought them all together. Some wondered if there would be an official public funeral held for the popular figure, but given the closed-off nature of Yue Hai and the Hogasha family, that seemed quite doubtful to occur. Other attendees knelt down in front of the temporary shrine and said their prayers for the departed soul in their own turns. Even as all this was taking place, there was one person in the gathering who did not belong. She would have been easy for the other attendees to dismiss as a survivor who might have come without the supervision of her parents. She wouldn't have been the only one if it were the case. The only time when this was brought to light when one of the leading teens who had vied for this event in the first place singled her out while she was near the portrait, staring at it as though she were in a trance. He noticed her because her lips were moving, and no sound was coming out. He might have taken it as a silent prayer, but she was standing upright, and her golden brown eyes were wide open as she did. "I don't recognize you," he said as he approached her, though not in a confrontational manner. She didn't look dangerous, and this boy in particular liked to think that he knew dangerous people, even when they tried to disguise themselves, having been at the mercy of such people for far too long. He supposed it was possible that she had happened upon the vigil and decided to pay her respects, despite not knowing anyone in the group. There was nothing wrong with this if it were the case, but he couldn't help his curiosity all the same. The girl's lips stopped moving as she refocused her eyes and set them upon him with a quiet steel that seemed almost in contrast with the soft contours of her delicate face. "I wouldn't think that you should," she answered him in a soft voice. With a slight incline of her head in his direction, she then added, "I'm sorry to intrude on your event. I just wanted to pay my respects to Kai." "Hey, it's all good with me," the boy said with a slightly sad smile. "Not like this is a private event. You just stood out to me since I recognize everyone else here." Gesturing to the portrait, he asked, "Mind if I ask how you knew him?" "It's a little complicated," she answered with a matching sort of smile. "But I guess it would be safe for me to say that I'm here because I want to understand just how significant he was for everyone he saved. If I ever want to be like him, I need to see the effects of his actions, not just his actions themselves." "Wait, are you a hero student?" the boy asked with a curious tilt of his head. She looked like a regular teenager, judging by her outfit, but the way she spoke and carried herself said that there might be a little more to her than one could assume at first glance. The raven-haired girl hesitated for the briefest moment before she answered, "Yeah, I learned from the best, other than him." "Other than him?" the boy repeated as he turned to look at the portrait again with a hint of confusion. Quickly turning back, he made to say, "But he wasn't a teacher?" He blinked a couple of times, but he saw no sign of the girl, nor were there any sounds of someone making their way through a packed crowd, which she would have thought impossible in their current conditions. If she tried to leave in a hurry, there would have been some sort of stir, but for all intents and purposes, she just vanished. Maybe she has an invisibility quirk? He rationalized once he realized he had been searching for over a full minute. Teleporter? I mean, those are rare, but... He shook his head at that, having realized that it didn't matter who the girl was. As long as she was able to pay her respects or whatever she needed to do. Little could he have known that in the grand scheme of things that were to come, there was no one in attendance to the vigil who was more important than that girl.
I hate to see you go. Without you, I just don't know. When the day comes when I fall, you won't be there to catch me, no. Try, but I can't seem to. Nobody could replace you. At a loss for words as the memories flood my mind. Took the only chance to bring me back again. Like family, so much more than a friend. Miss you 3,000. Miss you 3,000.
All right, so what stood out to you on this chapter?
I think at first I felt like all of the separate accounts were a little disjointed, but then once everything kind of started coming together in the final part of the chapter, it was a lot more cohesive and it made sense to me.
Okay.
Go ahead.
It was a hard thing to figure out. Like I wanted to look at like the broader world, like what his influence, like just how far did his influence reach? Mm-hmm. But if I went straight into like, oh, this random group of people who appeared in that one chapter one time, there wouldn't have been a whole lot of a connection, I think, for readers. So I decided to start with somebody who was like kind of part of the family, but had been removed enough from the situations that had played out in this story that they would have heard about them, but they weren't actively involved. Yeah. That's where Tensei came in.
Yeah. And I think, well, Tensei and then also Mina's brothers, I think it really lent itself to, you know, these characters care about the people involved, but they also, because they're not in the inner circle, they have more of the outside perspective of how the world is receiving it. Yeah. And so rather than just having random conversations from random bystanders, we have a little bit more information, and it kind of
like, how did this look to a closer observer who still wasn't in the picture most of the time?
Yeah, which I think is an important thing to take into account, because I think a lot of times it's very hard in storytelling when you have a large cast to really delve into those kinds of emotions. And I really like the characters that you created for Mina's brothers, because I believe it is canon that she has two brothers, right?
I don't think so.
No?
We don't know anything about her family.
Oh, okay, cool. Nice.
Yeah, that gives me, like, it's been long enough at this point where I'm just like, yeah, okay, like, we're getting near to the end of My Hero Academia. Like, not anything has come up about her family, so I'm just like, you know what, at this point I'm gonna
create your own
I'm gonna take my own creative license and go for it.
I like it. I think it works that she definitely has that personality of the hyperactive little sister who's nothing like her studious brothers, which, I mean, they're all hardworking and they all are like... Yep.
But like the two of them, like, they made the dean's list by the time they were in their second semester.
And she really has never cared about her grades. But when she's passionate and puts her mind to something, she'll work for it.
You do see that relation between them, because like, she's not a genius and she's not as dedicated as them, but she made it into UA high school. Like, you don't just get in on that, like, for funsies. Like, you have to work really hard to get there.
Exactly. No, I think, it's cool. Anyway, sorry, I got a little ahead of myself, because going back, you opened with Tensei.
Yeah.
And I like that he has a role, because in the canon, it's like, oh, well, he's being
He was
forced
more or
to
less a
retire.
plot device.
Yeah, and he's being forced to retire. We don't really get to know him.
He makes more appearances in Vigilantes, as far as I know.
Cool.
Like, I did a little bit of reading about that, and he, as I understand it, he's been, excuse me, still trying to shake off the last of that stupid cold. He's been an advocate for trying to come up with new programs for getting heroes on the streets that don't involve them going to high school and going for what he had the idea for
kind
was
of like a community college approach almost.
a little bit more like an extended work study kind of thing, where you intern at the agency and you basically get a mentorship program going.
Okay.
Where a hero will decide, okay, this person might work out as a hero, so I'm gonna school them. And like I think the way that he
it's more of a police academy approach than send your kids to school to be like full on FBI agents.
Yes.
All right.
Basically.
Okay, I see that. That makes sense.
Because he is of the opinion, he's like, we do need more heroes. He's like, but we need to. He's like, we need to broaden our spectrum a little bit. So, and whether or not he's right or wrong, those thoughts come into play here. Yeah. Because he's like, they got high schoolers out on the streets acting like actual pros when they could have been using my idea this entire time. Now we've got this happen, so he's pissed.
Okay, well that's cool. I didn't realize that there was that background with
like it briefly comes up. Like he kind of starts to rant about it, and his mom's like, "Okay, come on, calm down."
Yeah.
But yeah, so like if you understand the context behind that, like he has a reason. He has a very valid reason. Other than, he loves Kurai.
And he loves his brother, and he's worried about his brother.
He's upset. Basically his brother's dead.
Yeah.
He basically.
But he's also worried about his biological brother.
Yes. he loves Kurai like he's one of his own brothers.
Yes.
Like he does have the moment where he's like, I'm glad I don't have to bury my brother, but at the same time, it's like Kurai was basically like family.
Part of the family, yeah.
Yeah. So he has both personal and professional reasons for being upset here.
Yeah, so it's interesting how, and that's usually, that's how movements get started. You have a handful of people in different influential areas who start to feel strongly about something. And when they all start pushing together, that's when
traction starts happening.
Yeah, social change starts happening. So yeah, we have Tensei, sorry.
Yeah. Then we had Micah and Mako.
Which I really like their characters, and I had
fun with them.
The flashbacks were fun.
Yeah, I had fun making their personalities. B, it was kind of fun trying to reverse engineer the quirks again, because like I've done this before with Energon. I was like, okay, what three components could make Energon? And for this, it wasn't quite the same, but I was like, okay, I'm like, how could Mina be related? Like, how could her abilities be related to these? And
it's like, they don't really have combat quirks.
Technically, her middle brother, it's an absorb and release type. He probably could have done something with it, like weaponize. But that's
not his drive.
But no, it's not his. That's not his drive. But yeah, her brother has the absorb and release type acid quirk. And then her older brother just has the color shift quirk.
Yes. Which is pretty fun.
Yeah.
And he's the one who's the architect, yes?
The architect is actually the one who has the acid. He's the one that has the horns, the acid comes out of the horns.
That's right. The one with the color change, he said it was a good
thing he didn't get their mom's quirk, because it would have been a lot harder for him to be a lawyer. Yeah. And like, honestly, I didn't even plan that one out. Like, that one just kind of came to me on the fly, where I was describing his quirk, and I was like, wait a minute. If he'd had his mom's ability, like keeping a poker face in court is very important to have.
Yeah.
That would have been a lot more difficult for him if he'd had his mother's exact quirk. So I decided to tweak it a little bit.
Okay, all right. I like that.
Yeah. I honestly don't know what Mina's parents' quirks are. I'm guessworking.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that makes sense. I mean, and her coloring and her horns don't seem to have much to do with the acid.
They don't have anything to do with it.
So it's likely that those traits came from
as a physical aspect from her parents. Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. So it was fun to. It was fun
and then
to
also
create
seeing
those
seeing the major fight between Kurai and the Nomu through the eyes of the general public was pretty cool.
Yeah,
I enjoyed that.
I went to redo it, and I went back and read the stand
chapter.
The stand chapter. to kind of give context, and it struck me how short the event actually was. Like I was describing it from an outside perspective, and I'm like, a lot of the length is contributed to the fact that this is happening inside of Kurt Eye's head. Remove that.
Yeah.
And the fight only lasts like a few minutes.
Yeah, this is not Dragon Ball where we're all sitting here and giving our life story while we power up. You know,
Kurt Eye does that a little bit.
He does that in his head, but that's what it's a narrative tool. He's not actually sitting there and thinking these words. Yeah. It is a narrative tool to bring in what emotions are going into what he's doing and what's driving him. Yep. I mean, that's just that's the way that you write something where you're in someone's head, because when you're in a tense moment that's kind of life or death or changing, you kind of have those like life flash before your eyes moments, and if you're the individual who's experiencing it firsthand, you know yourself, you know your history, and you usually, not always, but you usually know why you feel the way you feel about something and why you're passionate and why you're fighting for it. But as the audience, we need to know that. Otherwise, it's not going to have as much depth. And that's why there's so much expository information in the midst of this quick battle, because it's going to make it a lot more impactful than reading something, which I'm sure a lot of fan fiction writers do, where it's like, and then he punched him, and then he kicked him, and then he fell on the ground. And it's like, that's not very exciting.
It's like you're telling me what's happening. You're not allowing me to experience it myself.
Exactly. And that's the difference between, good
show don't tell.
Yeah. Good storytelling and great storytelling, right? And I think that's why a lot of people who are into anime love it and kind of lose faith in a lot of Western entertainment, because and not everybody, I know a lot of people who love anime and love Western entertainment, but the people who are in it for the storytelling value, it's like short movies lose their romance. Yeah. Because there's only so much you can do in an hour and a half to 2 hours. Whereas when you have freaking 300 episodes or something, you can it's the difference between a novel and an epic, right? Yeah. And there's just a lot more to it. So anyway, sorry, that was a random tangent.
No, it's fine. It's one that we've gone on before. That's all right. Honestly, so going into the scene where I was like, okay, I'm gonna do the scene where the older brother is watching the fight from the TV. And like I had to stop. I was like, oh man, I might have to stretch this out into a third chapter, because I'm like, this is because it was already turning out to be kind of a long chapter.
Yeah, but when you actually read it was a quick.
But then
fight.
when I actually wrote it, and when I read it, like keeping in mind, like basically taking out the timing of all the self-reflection and all that, it was a fairly short sequence. Yeah. Like I still managed to make it a few pages because of the interactions between the lawyers and their assistants and all that, and like they're all gathered in the rec room. But yeah, I was able to wrap this part of the story up in just 2 chapters. Yeah. Because the next chapter we're gonna get back to not Isle Island. We're gonna get back to Nabu Island. And see what's going on with Class 1A. Yeah. Yeah. So I was just. It was just one of those things that kind of took me off guard. I was like, wait, this actually wasn't that long, was it?
And from here we moved to Gang Orca's.
So from there, so it was. How do I put this? Like we kind of like, so the closest relation was Tensei, and then I kind of want, like with each narrative change that happened, I wanted to step back further from Kurt Eye's inner circle. Yeah. And so I moved on to her brothers next, because they knew him, and they knew that she was involved with him. And there was kind of that moment where one of them was like, dude, this is like, of course she's upset. And then he's like, oh wait, you don't know, they were planning on getting married after high school. The both of them know their sister. They're like this is like her, this was like her dream romance. Like like this was her Prince Charming, and they like he actually wanted to be that dedicated to her. That like they don't get along with her very well, but they know enough about her to be like, oh my god, she's gonna be devastated. Like, they're like, and in their own way, they do care about her.
Oh yeah, absolutely, because they're her brothers.
Yeah.
And they don't have a horrible relationship. Like, they're actually a pretty healthy family for anime standards.
Yeah. But yeah,
she's not the main character, so she's allowed to have a healthy family.
Kurt Eye had a healthy family.
He did. It just kind of fell apart.
Through no fault of his own.
Yeah. which is usually the case.
Yeah.
But that
actually,
being
technically, through some fault of his own, I think that's what makes him stand apart.
Well, yeah.
Because he tossed his mom in jail.
This is true. This is true.
So technically his fault. Not really. Let's see. So after the brothers, so after the brothers and like we saw the lawyers and stuff like that, made it a lot easier for me to start making the transition like into the pro hero realm. Because like technically I could have started that with Tensei, but I decided to have him open because he has that personal tie to Kuro.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now we step back into the hero side of things, and we do start off with Gang Orca, if I'm not mistaken. Or wait, was it Gang Orca or was it Fat Gum? I need to double check this.
I think it was Fat Gum.
No, it was Endeavor. It was Endeavor.
Okay.
How did I forget that? Yeah. If
that
y'all have been
brat
keeping up with the anime, you know, like you'll know why I chose this narrative point. Like, so spoilers for stuff that's happening in anime season 6. If you haven't seen it yet, you know, sorry, but it's something that has to be talked about at this point in the story. We see Endeavor worrying about Shoto because he's kind of starting to see like that same like those same seeds. He's like this could easily, Shoto could easily become very much like Toya if this continues. And he's like standing there like, how do I deal with this? Because he's like, last time I didn't deal with it and then it ended up in disaster. He's like, but I didn't deal with it because he was of the opinion that if he dealt with it, he would have just made it worse. Now he knows that didn't work.
Yeah.
But he's still stuck in that,
he doesn't
that
know how
crossroad
because
of like, how do I talk to him?
Well, the
about
difference
this?
is Shoto pushes him away, whereas Toyo was desperate for his intervention, and so
approval.
It's a very different situation, but he's still worried because it's his child.
The parallels are there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So it was kind of fun to write about his like evaluation of Kurai, because there's kind of like this grudging respect where it's just like he talked back to me, but it's like, you know, he's a mountain of fire muscle. As this little kid, basically, who was just like, come near my friends, I'll wreck you.
See, and for me, it's like I at one time had this student who was the brattiest kid, and you'd never know it the way they behaved, but they had the most incredible artwork. And so I'd give an assignment, and just to spite me, they would, like, you know, for example, draw a snowman, but then have a toilet paper roll hanging off its arm, an incredibly like almost photorealistic toilet paper roll. But it was just like it's like
that kid's gonna be a good artist.
Kid, I can't stand that kid because they are so rude to me and they're so rude to everyone else, but they are incredibly talented, and I have to give them
Einstein
that.
would show up to school wearing socks on his ears just so he could get thrown out of class.
Yeah.
He like failed mathematics.
No, yeah, it's that's.
So it's like every once in a while you'll see those kids. It's like, if this kid can get going, it's like they're on the wrong track right now, but if they can get going in the right direction, they go in places.
Exactly. So he's like kind of game recognizes game situation.
A little bit, but yeah. Endeavor's like. There's like this feeling of like at one point he like really resented this kid.
Like, how dare you?
It's like, how dare you? And then like, but as he like kind of started to watch him from a distance, he was like, oh, he kind of has a right to be. It's like he's not all talk. He's earned his place there. Like he earned his place as the perspective number one in everybody's eyes. And like even Endeavor can admit that at this point, because like when he talked to him in the hospital, he was like, he saw how messed up Kurai was, and he was like, wow, you fought a gray Nomu and you ended up like this, you know, you're kind of lucky. And Kurai's just like, no, I killed the black one. And Endeavor's just like, excuse me?
Yeah.
By yourself?
Little
what?
Overpowered SHIT.
Little prick.
Yeah, basically.
But yeah, so it's like, how do I put, like, I honestly didn't think there would be a point in this story where I would want to or need to write from Endeavor's perspective. Yeah, and I would say that I do need to write from it.
You are one of the biggest Endeavor haters I know, too. Because, like, I know a lot of people who, like, want to say, oh, well, he's trying to repent. He's trying to do the right thing.
That doesn't absolve him of everything that he did.
Yeah, exactly. But, yeah, I thought it was very interesting that you wrote from his perspective, as you you dislike the character
I
so much.
dislike him very much. I mean,
You have
it's kind of like how it was with. I try to treat it the same way as I did with Midnight. I don't like her character, but I do like to think that I know how she would react to certain situations. So in that bit where they were trying to figure out, like, do we take Hikari out of the hero course or not? And she's like, no. And she gave her reasons for why she thought he would stay. I thought that was in character for her, just as I thought, like, I despise Endeavor, but I feel like this is the conclusions and the line of thought that he would come to.
And I think that just shows some growth as a writer, because I feel like in the past, if you didn't like a character, you'd either completely write them out or you would, like, make them act
out of character.
Out of character.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Oh, absolutely, I would have.
I think
absolutely, I would have.
And so I like that you're starting to see them more as people who are not changeable. And, you know, not to say that there's anything wrong with doing, you know, completely changing a character if you're writing your own fanfic, but I think as
you need
far
to change
as
the circumstances that create that character.
Exactly. As far as the technique goes with your storytelling, you need to kind of keep a focus on the goal and what rules you gave yourself when writing the story. And I think it's more compelling when characters are staying true to who they were written to be. Yeah. And because that is a lot more challenging than just making everyone say what you want them to say to move the story forward.
Yeah. Back to why I think I needed to write from his perspective once I sat down and thought about it, was he is the number one hero in Japan right now. Everybody's looking to him whether he likes it or not. And there's like almost this sudden whiplash because he was almost being treated as a placeholder again. And like in this version of the narrative, like he's kind of realized, like as he got to the number one spot and he sees Kurai rising to one day supplant him, he kind of like in comparing himself to this kid and to All Might and trying to shoulder the weight that they carried and will eventually carry, he's starting to realize like maybe he's like, I guess he's like placeholders all I'm cut out to be. But now it crashes back down on him as like he is the number one hero. Kurai's not going to be there to replace him someday. Yeah. There's no shining light for anybody. He's the burning embers. That's all Japan gets now. Yeah. And he's back to like, I'm all they've got. So like that weight that he carries in the show, like there was kind of a delayed onset for him in that sense in this story, where this is where it finally starts to hit him. It's like, I'm the one that everybody has to look forward to, because you know Kurai has made such a spectacular showing that everybody's like, oh yeah, give it a couple years, this kid's gonna be on the scene and everything's gonna be good again. You know, we got the golden age of heroes coming back in, and Endeavor can keep an eye on things while Endeavor's what they have now. Yeah, like there's nobody who's gonna be coming in clutch like.
Yeah, because Deku hasn't gotten really much of a limelight at this point in the
so people
story,
don't like Deku's on his way. But people don't know that.
Yeah, the general public doesn't know a whole lot about him. They haven't followed him. He hasn't had as flashy...
Well, he has to start over with learning his powers again,
he didn't have a very flashy entrance. And, now he's having to start from scratch.
So he placed third in the sports festival, so he has some renown.
Even so,
but he wasn't the winner.
People don't pay a lot of attention to the runners-up.
To the runner-ups, yeah.
And, like, I think, you know, if... As, like... For example, as a family that was really into college sports, you never really paid attention to the people who got drafted in the second, third, like in the third, fourth round. You'd be like,
I'll give you a more classic example. Everybody knows the name Michael Phelps. Yeah. If you have any sense of paying attention to the Olympics, you know who Michael Phelps is. But I'll bet you nobody that you talk to on the street is going to know who he competed against for each race.
Exactly. And that doesn't mean they're horrible swimmers. They're incredible. Some of the world's best swimmers.
This is how hard it is to get into the Olympics. I had a couple of friends who, they were triplets.
Triplets. Okay.
Yeah, two of them were brothers. They both competed to qualify in the Olympics. There was a 0.1 second difference between them. One of them qualified, the other one didn't. Jeez. That's how cutthroat it is trying to get into the Olympics. And it was a 0.1 second difference.
Yeah, so it's like just because of the mindset we have as human beings, we're going to pay attention to the number one and maybe the number two. But other than that, we don't really remember, even if the other people are really incredible. And that's, you know, and the media is, of course, going to start spinning it the way they want to spin it because it's going to get more attention. And we're going to start downward spiral at this point in the story anyway, both in your rendition and the other. So
well, it's going to be on a slightly different twist this time, though, because Tensei didn't just sit there and be angry. He got things going. He's pissed.
Yeah. So this is where we move into Fat Gum.
Yeah.
And oh my gosh.
Yeah. I was like, if I have a Fat Gum there, you know, like Amajiki's got to be there too. Because we didn't get a whole lot of on-screen time between Amajiki and Kurai and Kirishima.
But they did all work together.
But they worked together.
Like that
for
was
a while.
the internship arc for him.
Yeah. Like there wasn't a whole lot that I felt like I could do in that arc to add to it. But yeah, they both learned from Amajiki. Like even if
it's just like how we know that oh gosh, I'm having a brain fart. Dark Shadow. Tsukuyomi. We know Tsukuyomi are interned with Hawks. We've hardly seen them together, but we know that they went through a lot together, and he learned a lot from his mentor because you know, just again, spoilers. You see some really emotional moments between them later on that show. No, they got really close during the internship. Because that's
more
what
so than Hawks expected, I think.
Yeah.
Like I'm of the opinion that if Hawks hadn't had Tokoyami as an intern and like bonded with him like over the whole like Tokoyami was basically a flightless bird. Like if they hadn't bonded over that whole thing, I don't think he would have told Endeavor, train these guys up because they're gonna blow you away.
Yeah.
And
that's
how different things could have been.
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
I never thought about that.
Yeah, and like it was interesting to me to like. Because, like, Amajiki's not trying to disparage Kurai, but like, at the end, he just kind of has that opinion of, like, what good was it for him to learn here if he just died anyways?
No, yeah, I mean, that's the true pessimistic view. Like, when you're in the headspace that Amajiki is often in, that's where you're going to go with it. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, that we need people who can recognize those statements and start provoking those thoughts. Otherwise, you know, change can't happen.
Yeah.
And so that was pretty. And then I think Gang Orca was the last.
Yeah, Gang Orca was the last pro hero. Yeah, it was. Yeah, like, cause it's like I definitely wanted him to be in there because, like, he was the hero that Kurai looked up to. Like, that got covered less and less as the story went on. But if you go back to the first few chapters, Kurai's all about wanting to be like Gang Orca. Yeah. Like, that's his hero. Like, and everybody's Gang all about All Might
at this point.
And Kurai, Kurai, like when he first did the work, not the work stay, when he did the internship with Gang Orca, he was like, if I do well here, can I just have your autograph, man?
No.
And Gang Orca was just like,
what?
He's like, I don't usually meet kids who are my fans, and Kurai straight up tells him, he's just like, everybody else wanted to be like All Might, I just wanted to be like you.
Oh, my heart.
And so when and there was that bit when Gang Orca's in the hospital because he got injured by the guy that killed Kurai's uncle, and he's like, all right, photo time. And so he takes not only does he give him a signature, he takes a photo and he signs that. Yeah. And Kurai has that like framed in his room.
Oh.
Yeah. So like that would like at that point in his career, like that would have been Kurai's highlight of his hero career.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That was like that was him walking on cloud 9.
Yeah. So.
And then I enjoyed writing that little bit where Gang Orca just kind of almost wonders, just like, if I had taken him on, like could I have trained him better? And then he forces himself to stop because he's like, no, it's not a healthy it's not a healthy way to cope. He did what he knew was best, and you know he sent Kurai in the direction that he thought he needed to go in. Nothing that he did nothing he could have done would have led to a different outcome. Yeah, like that was just like he knows enough about Kurai, and he's watched his career. He's watched him take off, and he knew that, like given the situation and given his personality, that was the only way it could have ended. Yeah.
So anyway, I mean, so wrapping it up, like between the pro heroes that we've covered and Mina's
some of the ones Mina's brother, and even Ryukyu, Uraraka's mentor, she got in on that. Yeah. No, sorry, Endeavor wasn't a part of this.
No, but he's movement. But other than Endeavor, because he I feel like as the number one hero, he kind of has to keep his opinions to himself
a little bit,
just to keep the peace. But everybody,
the fact that there's a top 10 hero speaking out on this is gonna let people know, like, this is important. Like it's like this is not something that can be ignored or just brushed aside as like,
both
oops, our
current
bad.
and retired. Yeah. So it's we have the birth of a movement happening suddenly. And that's going to take us into these new arcs coming up.
Well, you're forgetting there's the last bit where the kids that Kurt saved.
That's right.
They were having a vigil.
Yeah.
They were having a vigil and like I originally wanted to cover this event as well as one that was being held in Fukuoka. Where there would be people that he had saved, and there was especially the people who got mutated.
Yeah.
I had mentioned that they had managed to recover, that the mutation was only temporary, but there was always the thought that like maybe if that Nomu had won, they would have stayed permanently these monsters.
Yeah.
So Kurai probably saved them from that fate.
Absolutely.
So I decided, I was like, but I didn't know how to like blend into that scene. So I decided I'm like, it's enough to know that this is happening somewhere else. I don't need to cover this up close too. Like I felt like just covering the one scene kind of was enough to give the impression of what was happening on the other end too.
Yeah. So we have this, these memorials that are happening with all these different people that he impacted already in his short career. And that definitely, and then we have our new mystery girl too, which I'm afraid to say much because I don't want to give anything away.
There's not really much we can say without spoiling the whole thing. We had some really interesting theories on the reviews.
I know. Really
I was like, oh man, some of these are so good.
Yeah, but that being said, you're just gonna have to.
Wait and see. Yeah. So like I said earlier, next chapter is gonna be back on Nabu Island. We're gonna be kind of seeing the island like after, like so at the end of the movie, Deku talks about how they chose to stay the remaining weeks and do what they could to help out the island. We're gonna get a look at what everybody's up to following that work.
Sweet.
So yeah, we'll start getting back into
poor Deku trying to figure out how on earth he's gonna master this new quirk.
Well, I mean, or like how's he got to process mourning his friend on top of that. So yeah, it's gonna be. Let me put it this way: side quest over. Time to get back to the main plot.
Yeah. All right.
But I hope you guys did enjoy the side plot as much as I did. Like originally, I wasn't even going to do these, but as I started working on it, I found that I really enjoyed it, and I really loved the context that was that it gave the story. So thank Becca for that, because if it wasn't for her, I definitely would have skipped over these.
Yeah, I felt like, because originally his chapters that, because you guys know he kind of pre-writes plans, does these rough drafts, and he doesn't really clean them up until he's ready to start publishing, because that's a lot of work. But, initially he was kind of just gonna kill him off and just immediately move into the next arc. And I think we needed a little transition.
You guys know me. I've always advocated for the school festival arc because the characters need a minute to breathe. Yeah. And I think the readers do too, even if they don't appreciate it at the time. I think it's the same sentiment here. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, for me, I almost I don't know why the first thing that came to my mind, just like as a similarly devastating moment, was like in the third Hunger Games book. I can't even remember. There was I think PETA was taken.
No, he was taken at the end of the second book. I think you're thinking of the wedding, where they had just rescued PETA, and he was like off the walls insane. Right. And everything was just so crazy that morale was down, and then someone was like, "Let's do a wedding. Yeah. Let's have a good time."
Yeah. So it's like you have this really devastating turn of events, but then all of a sudden we have some kind of downtime a little bit, and we're adjusting because they're in District 13, right? Yeah. Yeah. So they have this time where they're kind of adjusting to life in District 13, and like we're seeing how the society works and how it's kind of not really the greatest, right? Yeah. But anyway, that's I don't know why that just was the first example that came to my head.
It's pretty bleak circumstances. That might have something to do with it.
But not that's like my number one reference for good writing.
It's like Superman retired and Superboy just died.
Yeah. Yeah.
And all you've got is a really grumpy Batman. who is not afraid of icing people.
Oh my gosh. All right. Yeah. So anyway, yeah, I think that's it. I think that's about it.
Yep. Thank you guys so much for joining us for this podcast. We really appreciate it. And we'll see y'all again in a couple of weeks to get back into it for real. So have a Plus Ultra time until then.